And we are live. What's going on, y'all out there? What's going on? We are live, and I'm out of breath because I was just, running up the steps trying to get my little something to drink here. Y'all know how I do with these snacks and whatnot. So yeah, forgive me breaking open this tea here. We got a lot of things to get into tonight, but before we do, definitely want to give a shout out to who I got as a guest on here. Y'all know who it is. It's like you're not even a guest anymore, man. you family at this point. Part of the True ID family. So my man BK Apologist. How's it going there, bro?
Yeah, what's going on? Part of people, the place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping, sir?
There we go. It's crazy, man. I normally, this is my first time trying out this webcam that I got right here, man.
You ready to lose some more subs?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? you beat me to it, bro. You beat me to it. So before I get going, let me go ahead and say to folks out there now. Go ahead, hit the like button and share, because y'all might be the last likes and shares that I get tonight.
Go out with a blast.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man. Like, we did the the last video that I posted up here was, excuse me, I'm sharing the video, so pardon me for looking down. I'm trying to get some of my notes together. I'm not as organized as I generally like to be, but I just had so many thoughts about this topic tonight. It was kind of hard for me to pull everything together. So I'll get back to that in a minute. But after the last joint I did with where we did the breakdown of Candace Owens, that's the first video that I put out. At least over the last year or so, where I lost more subscribers than I gained, at least initially. I got a little bounce back after a while, but initially, it was Cats was dipping out to give me that peace sign, which is fine. That's okay. I mean, it's not about subscribers. I mean, right. I'll lose that for the sake of the truth. And so I have a feeling that tonight is going to be another one of those. You know what I mean? That's all right. We do what we do here at True ID. Want to give a shout out to everybody who's riding with us. See my man, Quentin out, and he's in here in the building.
We got Tyler. So that's his name, Quentin. I was wondering how to say his name. Thank you.
I think it's
what up, Quentin.
Right? Yeah.
You got the Black Atheist in the building. What's good, sir? Or ma'am? I mean, I don't want to.
Actually, that's a good point. I was about to say the same thing. I'm not sure if that's a sir or ma'am. I really don't know. But Black Atheist is somebody I've been seeing showing up quite a bit. So I guess that's a good thing. What I mean?
Absolutely.
We got my man Dwayne Brown. I knew he was going to be in the building. He hit me up.
It is a sir. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, pardon me. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to assume. So, what's up, Black Atheist? What's happening to you? Welcome to you. So I said, we got you, Adam. Yeah, well, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see. I mean, the dangerous part is I didn't prepare as much as I would like, which means I'll be just kind of speaking off the cuff at some points, but that can either be real good or real bad. So we'll find out. Nice. Real name is Lamont. Okay, cool. What's up, Lamont? What's happening with you? Slam RN's in the building. Karma Crunk is in the building.
What up, Karma?
So we're just taking a couple seconds here to definitely y'all hit that like button, hit the share button, get this thing out here. And tonight we're talking about a real serious subject. Normally we kick back and have a good time and just kind of joke around as we break things down. But tonight is actually, we are covering some probably the most serious content that I think we have thus far. You know what I'm saying? Dealing with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. The murder of Ahmaud Arbery. I'm sure a lot of people. I'd be surprised if anybody isn't aware of it at this point. It was really in the headlines this week. Prior to this week, I hadn't really heard anything about it. I guess maybe some people had, but it really just blew up in the headlines this week, particularly with the video. I'm not sure who's watched the video or who hasn't. I won't be showing the video here because I'm not sure how YouTube would treat that. Number one, and then number two. I just, I'm real sensitive about that. I'm very careful about things that I show on the channel. So we'll be talking about it, and I'm just kind of kicking back tonight. I'm just really we're just kind of coming from the heart. We really want to talk about We want to be informative, for sure. We want to be clear thinking, and that's really what this episode is about. It's about how should Christians view injustice? I mean, I believe that that what happened to Ahmaud was an injustice. I believe that it was wrong. I believe that he was murdered, not just killed. I know people are real particular about the word in there, and I believe unequivocally that he was murdered in the strongest sense that term can mean. And also, we want to know how Christian, how we need to deal with that. We talk about. Well, I'll just leave that as it is. You want to kind of share your thoughts a little bit, and then maybe.
I mean, I shouldn't be shocked, but I kind of am, for the simple fact that this is happening while the whole planet is going through a pandemic, right? And usually when you have these earth-shattering events, these extinction level events, it usually brings humans together, right? It usually forces human beings to let go of whatever presuppositions or prejudices they might have for the time. Of course, they'll pick them right up again. But the fact that this is happening while this universal plague is going down,
right, shows
you just how powerful hate can be. So
yeah, absolutely. But then at the same time, sometimes crisis brings out the worst in people. I'm saying, I think, like, when people think of the word crisis, there's different ways that term can be used. I come from a mental health background, so like when I think about the term crisis, one thing that I have in mind, shout out to Rox B. I'm saying, see her in there, Beatrice Wells in the building.
What up, Beatrice?
Beatrice Wells in the building. I can't pronounce the name. GFU Gigo's in the building. When I think about crisis, it's really where circumstances, if you will, have impacted you in such a way that your normal way of navigating problems are not sufficient. I'm saying you've been stretched beyond your capacity to deal with this or deal with that. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of really what you're thinking about when you're dealing with crisis. And when that happens, people will behave in ways that they ordinarily wouldn't, whether that be positive or negative. And I think in this case, when you have these gentlemen, these two murderers here, to be honest with you, I think in light of the COVID situation, I think that the people that shot Ahmaud, or Travis McMichael was the one who shot him, and then Gregory, his father, was on the scene armed as well. We'll get back into that. And I think the law enforcement, I think all of those people initially involved probably believed it in light of the COVID situation, or at least as kind of things, maybe within a couple weeks, I'll put it that way, of the incident. I think they were probably thinking maybe this will blow over in light of the COVID situation.
Right.
Maybe by mid-March it's like, maybe this thing will kind of be under the radar. Maybe that was on their minds. And then boom, next thing you know, this video hits. And by hits, I don't mean, it was, made known to the police, because they had the video from jump, from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? It hit the mainstream media and social media and so forth, and now has, blown up to the point where, some arrests were made. So maybe this would be a good time to kind of take a look at, what actually happened. Maybe, like, what do you think?
Yeah. Let's look at the particulars.
Yeah, cool. So, I'm not the news, what I'm saying? So I'm not going to give you like every, play-by-play detail, but I'm going to bring up a couple of notes here. As many people have already seen, unfortunately, on February 23rd, a gentleman, 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, was out for a jog. And, for most people who've seen the video, you can see him, jogging down, a road, broad daylight. And unfortunately, he's cut off. His pathway is cut off by two individuals, which we now know to be Travis McMichael and Gregory McMichael. And in the video, what you see is him jogging, and Travis McMichael, I believe, is kind of standing fairly in the middle of the road. Both of those men were armed. Travis McMichael was armed with a shotgun. Gregory McMichael was standing in the back of a pickup truck that was directly by Travis McMichael with a pistol, a handgun, whatever. And so initially, you see in the video that Ahmaud Arbery, who's kind of in the middle of the road himself, veers off to the right-hand side of the video, which I guess would be like the passenger side of the truck, seeming to try to avoid confrontation, with Travis McMichael, who's in the middle of the road. And then, the video drifts a little bit. You can't see what's going on. And by the time you get back, there's this struggle going on between Ahmaud Arbery and Travis McMichael. Ultimately, Travis McMichael shot him, 3 times with the shotgun, and he perished, right there in the middle of the street. Apparently, afterward, from what I read, is that there was, whether it be the McMichaels or somebody checked to see if he had any weapons. Obviously, Ahmaud Arbery was unarmed because he was out for a jog. Most people don't jog down the street armed, so as one would expect, he was unarmed. But nevertheless, he lost his life. Now, obviously, this whole situation, when the video surfaced, it made a bunch of noise. I mean, I couldn't even believe it when I first saw it. I mean, it was just so utterly despicable, and cowardly on the part of Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael. But I guess what struck me, it was so reminiscent of just a good old fashioned lynching. I don't even like saying good old fashioned, but it just, I'm trying to really capture that, just that old school.
Right. 2 Southerners getting in a pickup truck with their guns.
I mean, it just, it was really.
It sounds like a movie. It's like a really bad movie. Right.
Yeah, it was like a movie. It was just, it was just so reminiscent of just a flat out lynching type of a scene, as one would imagine that would go, you know what I mean? And but nevertheless, I mean, you always have the people who see videos like that and is, you got to wait for all the evidence and things of that nature. And the reason why, and I'll be honest with you, like normally I'm not the guy. I might have my perspective on situations like these, but normally I'm not really quick to share videos like that. And I'm relatively, I don't really hop on videos like that. You know what I'm saying? Like usually I'll try to see what's going on. But the issue is that from the outset, like when the story broke, there's reports of these gentlemen, the McMichaels, making statements and saying things prior to, the shooting, prior to the video surfacing that totally contradicted what we see in the video.
Right.
And that is crazy problematic, right? That's crazy problematic. Now, in a second, I'm going to be, bringing up, the law enforcement, side of it and where I think they mishandle things. And we'll be taking another, a closer look at some of the statements that were made and kind of how we break that down. But before I do that, did you want to say anything or did you want to add anything in?
Let's dive in, bro. Let's get it.
Okay. Now, what's interesting is this and I talked about the statements before and guess things happening before the video surfacing that really, I think, kind of condemn these gentlemen from a legal standpoint or as a matter of guilt. And I want to kind of share some things. The first thing I want to do is let's take a look at this is a letter from the district attorney Barnhill, I believe, because unfortunately again, I'm not a lawyer, you know what I'm saying, but I just kind of want to express it as best I can. From what I understand is that the case was initially handled.
Well, Nefer's in the chat, so she'll correct you when you slip up. So.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't see
Nefer's in the chat.
What's happening with you? Okay, cool. Nefertiti's in the building. Definitely. If you're on Facebook, particularly, go check out Nefertiti's page. She just had a dialogue with a young lady in regard to community, kind of processing instances like these and that kind of thing and trauma. So you definitely want to check out her channel.
And she personally sent a letter to, I think, the DA saying that, listen, we need justice. So I just want to throw that out there because a lot of times they say, well, Christians, you guys don't do anything. Nefer did something, all right? She used her pen and her legal prowess to make sure her voice was heard. So shout out to Nefer. You know what I mean?
Shout out, man. So. Shout out, And actually, I sent a letter as well, inspired by Nefertiti. You know what I'm saying? I saw her post. And actually, her post was one of the first things I saw, but I didn't really know much about the situation until I saw her post. And I started looking more into it. And, she talked about sending a letter. And so, I definitely hopped on that email. And you still can, by the way. We can still get involved and make our voices heard. And unfortunately, we'll get back to that. But, as far as the arrest, but we still can make our voices heard. And hopefully we'll get back to that in a minute. So I want to take a look at, and hopefully I'm hoping you guys will be able to see this. This is a letter written by Jordy Barnhill and basically talking about referring the case Give me 1 second here. I'm trying to share my screen.
Yo, you saw what Nefa just said?
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, she said a new video came out today showing him jogging up to the abandoned house and going inside for 3 minutes and jogging away before they run inside for their guns and chase him. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I definitely didn't know that, which is wild. That's wild. So, and okay. So yeah, actually, so let's backtrack before we get here. So really what she's referring to is the McMichaels believed Arbery to be a burglary suspect. Apparently they reported that there were a string of burglaries in the area, and that as we'll see in a minute, they Travis Arbery actually, which I'll play the 911 call in a second, where he says that it was that the gentleman, that Arbery was the person that I guess matched the description, or was the person that had been suspected of breaking in or whatever. And so apparently he had eyes on Arbery, and so on. Well, what's interesting about it is we're going to see what Arbery saw. Well, I guess whatever video from Arbery, of him going in, and then what Travis reported that he saw, which I think would be kind of interesting. And so, and this all kind of plays their justification or lack thereof, for what they did.
Could I share something real quick before you do that? Dealing with the burglary, the thing. Is that cool?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
All right. Let me share something. Because as things progress, like you said, the story doesn't seem to really add up. And here's one of the reasons why. Let's see, guys, could you see? Are you sharing my screen? I can't tell from here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Nah, my bad. Let me share your screen. Okay, gotcha. Here we go.
All right, cool. So we see here, this is from the Daily News. No burglaries were reported in neighborhood where Ahmaud Arbery was killed, contradicting suspect claims. Report says here the two Georgia men who were caught on video shooting the unarmed jogger to death in February claimed they were chasing a suspect behind a series of burglaries in the area. But a local police official said that the last break-in in the neighborhood was reported nearly 2 months before the shooting. The last known burglary in the neighborhood happened on January 1st, more than 7 weeks before the February 23rd incident that ended Arbery's life at the age of 75. Glynn County Police Lieutenant Cherry Batchelor told CNN on Friday. The New Year Days police report states that a 9mm pistol was stolen from an unlocked truck outside the home of Gregory and Travis McMichael, the father and son, who on Thursday was charged with murder. So, not saying that people weren't being robbed, but there was no official statements of such crimes for a minute, so just want to add that to the situation.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking bootleg as a mug, man. Yeah. Oh man, it's just what it's just, man. I ain't gonna lie, man. I've been all messed up, man. I mean, like this week, man. This whole situation really got to me, man. More so than most of that I've encountered like this. It's like really messing me up. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know what I mean? But anyway, as Nefertiti mentioned, there's a house that was under construction. So this is not a home that somebody was, living in or anything like that. It was a house that under construction. Actually, as you'll hear in the video that I'll play in a second, the individual, Travis, McMichael, even acknowledged that, you know what I'm saying? And so, matter of fact, maybe this would be a good time to just go ahead and play the video. You know what I mean? Or play the 911 call.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to put my thing first, so that
maybe I'll just go ahead and bring that up.
No doubt.
Or play the 911 call. I'm actually just hit YouTube and play it myself.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second here. It's going to take me a second to kind of bring it up if you want to kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's we want to talk about the actual case, right? But then what we're going to do afterwards is really look at, because the word that you hear more than anything else, right, is justice, right?
Right.
And the thing is, words have different connotations depending on who's using them and what the situation, is required of that particular definition. So when we have conversations with people, it's kind of hard to continue to have a conversation when we don't both agree with how certain terms are being used. So we hear the word justice, right? Now, what does that term mean to somebody who's a disciple of Jesus, as opposed to maybe how the rest of the world might denote justice, right? So that's something that we want to do as well. We want to make sure that we understand what justice means from a biblical perspective, right? So that we know how to act accordingly when these injustices occur, because things should happen when injustice occurs, right? So that's another thing we're going to look into as well. It's not a passive understanding of justice. It's far from that. So.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. That's where we're trying to go with it. So let's try this again. All right, so now we're going to try. I want to take a listen to the 911 call from Travis McMichael, and then we'll kind of go from there. All right, give me 1 second. Okay. Are y'all ready? Here we go.
Communications operator says. Hey, yeah, I'm looking at the Satilla Shores. Okay. Great place out here. There's a guy in the house right now. The house under construction. Okay, do you have your address or that house's address? Right at 219 or 220 Satilla Drive. And you said someone's breaking into it right now? No, it's all open. It's under construction. And he's running right now. There he goes right now. Okay, what is he doing? He's running down the street. Okay, that's fine. I'll get them out there. I just need to know what he was doing wrong. Was he just on the premises and not supposed to be? And he's been caught on the camera a bunch before at night. Kind of an ongoing thing out here. The man is still in his house. He's got parked. He's up there. He's not going to finish it. So. Okay, that's fine. And you said was a male in a black t-shirt? A white t-shirt. Black guy, white t-shirt.
All right. So there's one of the 911 calls that was made prior to the shooting. And a couple things you want to notice about that. One is.
All right. So, I mean, you hear the guy's report. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm going to explain why this is significant in a second. Okay. Now, he's saying that he's seen somebody in the house, and the guy's running away. And I think the key thing to keep in mind is what exactly did Travis McMichael claim that he saw, right? That's going to be pretty key, because I want to take a look at, I guess probably the main defense, as far as I know, that they're appealing to is this notion that, for Travis and his father are claiming that they were making a citizen's arrest, right? So we want to take a look at what Travis McMichael claimed to have seen. And we want to know, does, his, what he reports, here on this 911 call, does it meet the standard of what he would need to claim that he and his father are making this citizen's arrest? Because what happens is, after this call, apparently, Travis McMichael and his dad, get them guns out, hop in the truck, and they go chasing after Arbery. And the question we want to know is, like, did they have justification in doing so? Obviously, I think not. So let's kind of take a look at why. And here's why this is important, because the thing is, I made a couple statements already. I've referred to this as being murder, and the whole dialogue that we're having here has to do with, what do we do with injustice? How should Christians view injustice? And so I want to just establish why it is that I'm claiming that this is an example of injustice, and then kind of set the stage for a broader discussion. Okay, so let me bring up my screen one more again. All right, give me 1 second here. Okay, so this is from the district attorney, right? By the name of Jordy Barnhill. He's one of the gentlemen who passed along the case because, and actually, what I can do is I'll put the link to this right here in the chat for anybody who wants to fact check me on whatever it is I'm presenting here, or just kind of at least know what my sources are. So, boom, there you go. I just now put that in the chat. All right, so you may or may not be able to see this. I'm going to try to make it a little bigger here, so we can all kind of be on the same page. Let me see what I can do. All right. Oh, is that better? BK, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's better there? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so try to make sure everybody see it. So this is, basically Barnhill giving a justification of the actions that he's taken as he's passing this case along, to pass the buck to somebody else. And so he spends the first part, and y'all, I'm not going to read obviously the whole letter. It's like a 3-page letter. But what I want to get to is what he's giving as a justification for why these gentlemen had these gentlemen, Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael, had justification. And actually, you know what? Actually, this reminded me too. So a lot of focus has been on Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael. Travis being the shooter, Greg McMichael being his father who was in the truck. But also, there's another gentleman, Brian Williams, who's also I'm not sure if they've arrested him yet, but I know there's been talk of it. And for anybody who's seen the video, apparently, it's Brian Williams is the one who was filming. He was the one who took the video. He also was responding to, I guess, the alarm, whatever that Travis McMichael and Gregory McMichael sounded in the neighborhood, so to speak. So I guess he was also pursuing Ahmaud Arbery. And so anyway, so these gentlemen are talked about here in this letter. I just want to make sure I clarified who this other person was. So it says, it appears Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and Brian Williams were following, quote, in hot pursuit of a burglary suspect. We'll get back to that in a minute. With solid firsthand probable cause in their neighborhood and asking/telling him to stop. It appears their intent was to stop and hold this criminal suspect until law enforcement arrives. It's according to Barnhill, under Georgia law, this is perfectly legal. Now, first of all, I just want to say, yeah, and maybe Nefertiti can correct me on this. This just kind of struck me just now. But, to refer to somebody as a suspect, I think that's kind of interesting right there. Like, I mean, is there some legal weight to that term? Like, so for example, if I witness something or if I claim that you did something, like, does that make you a suspect? Or like, what exactly qualifies somebody as being a suspect? You see what I'm saying? That'd be kind of interesting to kind of revisit there. But anyway, this is the legal code that Barnhill quotes or cites rather to supposedly give justification to the citizen's arrest attempt or whatever. Apparently, according to Georgia Law Code 17-4A-60, a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge, right? If the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Okay. Now, what's interesting about that is, so just a minute ago, we saw, that Travis McMichael reported that he saw the gentleman looking into or going into the house or whatever. Now, at that point, what you have is trespassing, right? Which, to my knowledge, is not a burglary.
Right.
I could be wrong about that, but right. As far as I know, and particularly if the house is open, I mean, he didn't, no locks were broken or nothing like that, So it seems to me that I think that would be like trespassing. So you don't have just off that alone a felony, right? Travis McMichael did not report, or he didn't say in the 911 call that he saw any items that were taken or anything like that. He just says that he saw this gentleman on the scene, and he comes and then he's running away and so forth. But he doesn't report that he saw anything being taken out of the home or anything of that nature that would constitute him, maybe assuming that there's a burglary or something like that had taken place. So at best, it seems to me that what you have is, a trespassing, type of a situation, if that would be the case. Now, Trespassing, I mean, to my knowledge, is not a felony. You know what I'm saying? I could be wrong about that. I mean, I'm willing to be corrected. But if it's not a felony, now going back to this law code, it says if the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Now, it seems to me that if this trespassing is not a felony, then already that eliminates some justification that they could have possibly had for pursuing this guy, because he hasn't, to their knowledge, they don't have, they didn't witness a felony. Number one. Number two, it says the offender, if he's escaping or attempting to escape. Now, this may have to, I guess, I don't know if this gets into intent or what have you, but it doesn't appear that Arbery was trying to escape. It didn't appear that he had any intentions of like, oh man, I'm being pursued and therefore I need to get away. He didn't know that he was being pursued, and so he just going along with his morning jog as he had been. So I just kind of raise these questions. It just seems to me, I don't see how these gentlemen would have had warrant to chase him down, given that they didn't report to have actually witnessed a felony. And then also, if this gentleman doesn't seem to be trying to escape from anything, and he's just kind of going along his jog, like how then do you, run this, how do you then parlay that into a citizen's arrest type situation? Like how is that justification then for a citizen's arrest? In addition, now mind you, some people say, oh, well, there was burglars in the area, or according to Travis McMichael, I mean, there's been somebody seen on video several times. I mean, hey, be that as it may, let's just say that there was somebody seen several different times, or whatever, in terms of at the time, at that moment, in terms of the individual that you're dealing with, you would still need, somebody to, you still need to meet these criteria, that Barnhill has cited, you know what I mean? And I'm not seeing it,
Okay, Nefer said that it's a misdemeanor in Georgia, trespassing.
Right. So if it's okay, well, thank you, appreciate it, Nefer. That's what I thought. I'm trying to tread cautiously here. I really am. I'm clear thinking, and I'm trying to be open to feedback. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to do. Thank you. You know what I'm saying? So according to Nefertiti, and actually, I think I am going to have Nefer, because she'd be more qualified to speak on this than I would. But for a burglary, you have to prove criminal intent upon entry. You know what I'm saying? So, but again, I'm trying to tread lightly. Like, listen, I'm not the guy who's just going to spout off and just kind of go off of emotion or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I try to be very cautious about these things. Okay, so now in light of this right here, right? It's verified by Nefertiti. It seems to me that if anything, okay, Arbery was trespassing, which is a misdemeanor. Okay, now if Arbery has committed a misdemeanor, then you do not have, according to this law code that we just looked at, you do not have a felony upon which Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and Brian Williams could then ground justification for pursuing Arbery, you know what I'm saying, and making a citizen's arrest. Right? Because it says if the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Now, here's another layer of it. Now, and we can move on from here. But it says that then you have to have reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion, right? Suspicion of what? A felony. So you have to have reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion for the felony if you're going to pursue this person,
right?
Which they don't have. Now, here's the thing about it. Let's say that Travis McMichael is, he's just steaming mad, man. And I can take this off now. He's steaming mad, and he's just like, oh, the guy's getting away, and we got grounds for the citizen's arrest or whatever. He just left the property, whatever, and they pursue him. Now, when you approach this gentleman and he's running down the street, jogging down the street in athletic gear. Now, I'm not a criminal. Right. I've never been involved in any burglaries or anything like that. But it just seems to me, if I was going to, burglarize a home, I probably wouldn't do it unarmed.
Broad daylight.
In broad daylight and in athletic gear, a thin white t-shirt and some shorts, sneakers, or whatever. Probably not, right? Just common sense would say, you know what, this person does not appear to be in any way, you know what I'm saying, look like they just burglarized anything. So if the person doesn't appear to be, you know, primed and ready for a burglary, he's not armed, he's wearing athletic gear, so on and so forth. You don't see any items on him that are stolen. He's not running down the street with a couch on his back or a TV in his arm or anything like that, right?
Right.
So at that point, it seems to me like, okay, well, regardless of what I've seen, I can't say this is a burglary at this point. I can't say that this individual is out here burglarizing, stealing this, that, and the third, because it just looks like a guy running down the street having a job at this point. So right. When I think about, again, when you think about the legal criteria of there being this reasonable and probable suspicion, okay? Reasonable and probable means it's got to be more likely the case than not that this individual committed felony burglary in this case, because they're saying that he would have had to commit some sort of burglary, or whatever. If you can't show that it's more likely than not that this individual committed this felony that you're chasing them down for, you don't have grounds for a citizen's arrest, right? Now, again, and I know I'm talking at length, but I'm just trying to explain like why this is so ridiculous, okay? And I'm trying to hold it together. This thing is all right. I'm trying to say I'm busted at the seams, but I'm trying to hold it together. I'm on everything. So here's the thing about it, though, right? For all the stupid people who hopped on my page and said something about, oh, well, he was fighting them, I'm going to show you how stupid this is. I don't know where y'all are from. If I'm running down the street and I see two armed individuals yelling at me, I'm going to think that my life is in danger.
And you're going to go the other way.
I'm going to try to get away, which is exactly what Arbery did. He's jogging along. He doesn't know what's going on. Travis McMichael is in the middle of the street with his shotgun. Arbery tries to go around the other way of the truck, and evidently, one way or the other, Travis McMichael ends up close enough proximity to him for there to be this physical struggle. Now, we don't have audio on the video that I've seen anyway, so we don't know what was said and so on and so forth. But if I don't know you and I see two armed individuals telling me to stop, I'm not stopping. I don't have to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know who you are. You're not law enforcement. You know what I mean? And for all I know, I mean, shoot, we talking about, man, these people in the South. We know what goes down in the South. You know what I'm saying? So of course,
he might feel like he's about to get robbed.
Exactly.
Two dudes pull up with guns on you. I mean, Exactly. So my thing is this, right? So the only thing that I've got that Arbery, if I'm Arbery, the only thing I'm armed with is a white t-shirt at this point. And I got two armed individuals coming to me. I'm gonna think that my life is in danger. He tried to get away. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And these individuals and Travis McMichael ends up taking his life. So that's why. Now here's the thing. Real quick. All right. Some people, had some angst, I think, in terms of the way I titled this video, because I called the murder, you were talking about the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Okay. Now, just real quick. Now, this is a side note. For all my people, you know what I'm saying? Oh, well, how do you know it's a murder? I mean, it hasn't gone to trial yet. Listen. First, we have to stop conflating biblical definitions and legal definitions. Okay? Biblical definitions and legal definitions, right? So people have been rightly identifying murder for thousands of years before America's law code was written. All right. So I don't have to wait until America's, legal system decides to call something a murder in order for me to refer to it as murder. I'm talking about murder in the biblical sense. To take someone's life unjustifiably is murder. Okay. That's what it is. Right. And so people, innocent until proven guilty, so on and so forth. Listen, I understand that. We have to stop conflating legal definitions and processes with biblical definitions. From what I've seen,
They murdered the guy. They didn't have justification. They didn't have they didn't have proper justification to pursue him in the first place, because you can't, by Travis's own admission, he did not observe a felony act. He observed a misdemeanor. And so you can't chase somebody down and do a citizen's arrest for a misdemeanor by Georgia's law code. But they did. They created a situation in which violence ensued, and then they took the man's life. That's murder. That's murder. Right? Now, that's obviously an injustice already, but what makes it just adds insult to injury, and I think that's even saying it too light, okay, is you have a situation where already you got an injustice going on, and then the police department just totally befuddles it. According, as a matter of fact, I might bring up the video later, but apparently the family was told initially that Arbery was killed in the process, in the home, and in the process of making a burglary, and he was killed. This is what the parents was told. Okay, and we know that's not true now, but that's obviously false. That's demonstrably false now that we have the video. On top of that, you have people passing the buck and going, just passing along to
conflict of interest. Right.
Conflict of interest. Apparently, I don't know. I feel like I'm getting long-winded at this point. The point is, I'm saying, I'm just going to fast forward a little bit because I know we got a lot to get to. The point is, the video finally drops. It's forwarded to the GBI, which I guess is like the Georgia version of FBI. I don't know, but it's a higher level of policing or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And according to the representative from the GBI, even though Barnhill, in the letter that I just showed you, he says that the shooting was justified, and has sat on it. And I mean, he didn't feel like it needed to be acted upon any further. That was all he was going to do with it. But the GBI representative said that within like 2 days of looking at the evidence, they realized there was more than enough evidence to arrest these people, and they did so. Right now, this of course was after thousands, I imagine, of phone calls to Thomas Durden, who was the DA that this thing was shifted to after Barnhill or what have you, or whatever. Thousands of calls to Georgia officials, thousands of people on posts and video, just public outcry. After the public outcry, finally we have these two arrests come about, and we got a long way to go in this case. I mean, arrests. I'm glad they're arrested. But we've got a long way to go. Yeah, thank you, Never. They've also been charged with felony murder. Now the question has to be asked. How do two agencies, it's because not just individuals. I mean, of course, in each case, whether it be on the local level or however high you go, there's more than just one person looking at the video, looking at the evidence. But on both levels, how do these two, law enforcement entities come to these radically different conclusions? I'm saying at the local level, justified citizens arrest, blah blah blah. They're going to let it sit. This is back in February 23rd. Mum's the word. That's all she wrote. I'm saying? Public outcry happens. GBI gets involved. Well, there's more than enough evidence here to charge and arrest them. Boom, they're arrested and charged with felony murder and aggravated assault, from what I understand. How do these two entities come to such radically different conclusions? Well, perhaps Arbery's mother was right. Arbery's mother suspected that there were individuals. I'm getting the names. I think it was Jackie Carr. I'm going to mess that up. It could have been Barnhill, but she. I don't want to overstate my case here or just kind of get it mixed up. But she believed that there was individuals handling the case who had ties to the McMichaels. One of them like worked with them or something like that, worked with Travis McMichael or what have you, or something like that. And so they believed that they were too close to the case, and so they needed to recuse themselves. And Barnhill's like salty about it. I put the letter in the chat. Y'all can read it for yourself. Like he seems salty about it. There's no connection. He seems salty about it. But from early on, Arbery's mother had some concerns about how this thing was being handled. Unfortunately, it's gone to the national stage where these gentlemen have been arrested. And rightfully so. And I hope they just throw the book at them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Jacob Brown says, not saying it was. He said I made a case for it, being a misdemeanor, but just saying if it was, shooting him is just so far beyond a reasonable response. I agree. Now, unfortunately, as Barnhill, I keep referring back to the letter, but I don't have time to go through it all. But as he he would contend that these two gentlemen were, it's an open carry state, and what's his name? Arbery initiated the contact, and therefore they defended themselves legally, and that was kind of a part of his 3-step argument. Just kind of sum it up. Barnhill believed that they were justified in the chase, based on making the citizen's arrest. They were legally open carrying, and they could defend themselves. So he kind of used both of those 3 parts of the law code to suggest that these gentlemen were not in the wrong, for shooting Arbery. The problem is it all falls apart. It's like a deck of cards. It all falls apart when you realize that these gentlemen did not observe a felony act, for one thing. And on top of that, I mean, they don't have reasonable and probable suspicion. That wording really matters. Reasonable and probable suspicion to do with it, to take the course of action that they took. So it's just a mess, man. It's just a mess, and it's just one of those things where it's like, people don't understand. Listen, all right. I'm trying not to get too far ahead. I know I'm saying we're like 40 minutes in, but I really wanted to make sure we did that. You know what I'm saying? Here's the thing, right? For all my friends out there, when we talk about racism, okay, when we talk about racism, I'm not going to spend a whole lot. I'm actually going to do a whole show on this, I believe, Lord willing. And when we talk about, there's no, can you give me examples of systemic racism today and so on and so forth? Listen. It would be relatively difficult for there to be like legalized, like racism on the books. I mean, it's kind of near impossible, you know what I'm saying, today. But when you think about systemic like racism, you know what I'm saying, there can be racism operating within a system, you know what I'm saying, without it being like laws on the books. I mean, it happened, so it just amazes me when people have a hard time with that. Now I'm going to get to the race aspect. I haven't even touched on that yet, you know what I'm saying, but I'll probably come back to that after we cover some other things. I don't want to get too far ahead. So let me stay the course, and then we'll get to this. So I said a lot. How about you? You want to kind of bring it back to where we were trying to go with, and then
it's interesting because this particular incident has such great reverberation through different people's ideologies that may or may not usually agree. And the case in point, if I could share my screen, I found this to be very interesting. It is.
Oh shoot!
Am I sharing?
No, my fault. I accidentally put share screen, man. I'm all jacked up, man. I'm trying to. I'm really messed up. I'm laughing, but it's just because like this thing, y'all don't know, man. I've been going through this, man. This thing really messed me up, yo.
So this is an article that Dr. Michael Brown wrote. Now we know, Dr. Brown is very conservative. He is a Trump supporter, right? He makes no bones about it. He's very clear where he stands in the political spectrum, right? And he says, again, please watch the video and come to your own conclusions. Then ask yourself this: if the colors had been reversed, do you think you would have heard about this story much sooner? The shooting took place on February 23rd, and the outrage is only growing now that the video is getting more attention. Those are very fair questions to ask. Do you agree? As lovers of the Lord, let us be lovers of justice and righteousness too. It's biblical, Now, and what's even more interesting about this article, he throws a series of caveats before he even introduces that maybe we should ask a question. Like he says, listen, I'm not woke. I'm not a social justice warrior. Like, don't get it confused, But when you look at the situation, it's fair to ask, if these guys were Black, would things be different? Now, you have to understand, for someone like Dr. Brown to make this question, this is a very radical departure for him. He doesn't usually engage like this. But even from him, being as conservative as he is, he even looks at this situation as something's wrong here. Something's very off, to the point where, and he's taking a chance, because by him even suggesting this question might put him in odds with the ideology of others that he usually agrees with. So he's actually being very radical for him, and I found this to be very interesting, that he actually took time out to be like, hey, let's look at it from this spectrum as well, so. Just want to share that real quick.
Daggone it. Oh, man. I've been trying to hold it together, man. I got to say what I got to say, bro. I got to say what I got to say. Let me tell you something, man. So, respect to Dr. Michael Brown. You know what I'm saying? This really is not aimed at him at all. You know what I'm saying? But what pains me is that you're absolutely right in that by taking this particular stance, it would put him at odds with a great deal of individuals, particularly in the apologetics community or the Christian community that leans heavily conservative.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the reason why I say that, I was going to get to this later, but I just got to get it out, man. I just got to get it out. Now, my frustration is that when Christianity Today released an article some months ago with some very disparaging remarks about Donald Trump, calling for his impeachment. I can't tell you how many apologists and how many individuals that I know personally had a whole lot to say in defense of Donald Trump when it came to that Christianity Today article. They were very critical about Christianity Today. Now, I'm not saying whether Christianity Today is right or wrong. I'm saying that's not my point. But when it came to saying something about Donald Trump, I had numerous friends who were very vocal and upset about somebody criticizing, a gentleman who is obviously the head of the conservative machine right now. You know what I'm saying? When I look out and see what's going on right now with this COVID-19 situation, I have a lot of my friends who are real loud about, these stay-at-home orders, and they believe it's an infringement of their rights and all these kind of things. And they have a lot to say about, those kinds of things. But when it comes to injustices like these, not one mumbling word from some of y'all. Not one mumbling word from some of y'all. Don't talk to me about Kaepernick taking the knee and y'all being upset about it when if you have instances in which there's obvious just heinous acts of just evil and murder and you don't say anything about it. Don't talk to me about Kaepernick taking a knee and how much you care about the flag when Ahmaud Arbery's citizens, his rights as a citizen were trampled upon and you have nothing to say. That's how I really feel about it. That's how I really feel about it. Because at the end of the day, however y'all want to carry it, I'm saying I'm dealing with Hebrew Israelites, I'm dealing with Comedics, I'm dealing with Black atheists, I'm dealing with Moors who are all very critical about the church, particularly white Christians when it comes to instances like these. And I'm trying to represent the gospel and demonstrate how just because you're a Christian, that doesn't mean that you have to be docile in the face of evil and oppression and injustice. That's apologetics too.
Right.
Okay. You have to listen. When you think about oppression in America, okay, there's an intersection between the problem of evil, okay, and the African American experience. And that intersection is racism and injustice and oppression. And so if you're going to do apologetics in the African American context, you've got to be able to demonstrate how the biblical worldview stands up in the face of those kinds of things, because otherwise you can't give an adequate answer to the problem of evil.
Right.
Now, some of that answer you've got to be able to show is, okay, how does your framework, how does the biblical worldview, how can I live that out in such a way that I can properly navigate oppression and ultimately this problem of evil and suffering that we all deal with? If you can't do that, then you're doing a disservice to the gospel. You're doing a disservice to the biblical worldview. Therefore, it is imperative, I'm saying, that if you're going to do apologetics in the African American context, you've got to be consistent with this morality, this objective morality that we claim all the time. And if you're not going to do that, then you cannot be critical of the Hebrew Israelite or the Moor or the Black atheist or Kemetic or whatever when they look at you and see hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. You can't. You have no answer for it, right? Don't IM me about Ahmaud Arbery. I don't want no IMs. Don't IM me about it. Don't hop on my thread. You know what I'm saying? And co-sign. You say something about it. You get angry about it. Because at the end of the day, injustice is everybody's problem. If you're a Christian.
Right. Right.
Man, I'm trying to.
No, you're doing good. I mean, but
hey, man,
no, you're doing good, bro. You're doing good. You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
All our names, man.
You're doing fine.
On everything.
But this goes right back to the whole reason why you have this channel and why you call it the True ID, right? The Imago Dei, being the solemn of Yahweh, right? We're all images of God. Therefore, each individual has intrinsic value. So when someone goes and takes another image's life, that's injustice, because you're operating out of malfunction. You're not functioning properly, because your ideal functionality is to be like the Most High God.
Exactly.
That is what you've been designed to do. Anything that goes outside of that is injustice, right? And we're going to get into some scriptures about that as well. But that's the issue.
Man. My fault, man. I just,
No, bro. You're doing good. You're doing good. But again, I feel you. But the reason why it's so hurtful for us, because as Christians, we all should have the same conviction about human life, that God created humans to reflect and to represent him. So when you see another human being, regardless of phenotype or pigmentation, what you're seeing is a fellow imager in God. That's what you're seeing. So when you decide to take another image's life, you are malfunctioning in your representation. You are malfunctioning in your representation. And justice is to make sure that we remedy that malfunction. That's what justice is.
There you go.
To remedy the malfunction of you not representing properly the God who created you in the first place.
There you go. Whew. All right, man. So I got some. We got a little ways to go. I had to do that, man. I had to get that out myself.
No, you was right on, bro. Don't worry about it.
It was we need to get on that. Okay, so you want to let's get to some scriptures that and we're gonna come back to that point, because I got more I want to say there. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But you want to go ahead with go
yeah, I definitely want to. So
that was my man GI, you know what I'm saying, in the chat. You know what I mean? That's my best friend there, man. My homeboy from way back. You know what I'm saying? Pre-dreads, Adam Coleman. You know what I'm saying? That was before the dreads.
Oh, wow.
So,
right. Are you sharing my screen, bro?
Yeah, here we go.
Cool. So, now this is the scripture, right, that gets thrown at us by other people who are not believers, right? And they use this to get in our case, saying that we're not about justice because of this. So, Matthew 5, starting in verse 38. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let them have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. Now, people will take this verse and say, well, you see, you guys will just let everybody walk all over you. And again, context is king. Because what is Jesus speaking about throughout this particular chapter, right? He's going into the law, right? Earlier, before he gets to this verse, he says, it is written, do not commit adultery. But I say, if anyone looks lustfully in his heart towards a woman, he's committed adultery in his heart. It says, it is written, do not kill, right? But if you are angry with your brother in your heart, you've already committed murder. So he's trying to really show the true essence of the law. And he's going down the list. And he gets to this. He says, it's written, eye for an eye, right? But then he says something very interesting in verse 39. He says, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. What does Jesus mean when he says, don't resist the one who is evil, right? Well, let's look at the word. The word here in the Koine Greek is antistome, which means to forcibly declare one's personal conviction, to keep one's possession, ardently withstand without giving up, letting go. Now, why does he make this an issue? Why is he saying do not forcibly declare one's personal issue? Remember, he is course correcting Israel's understanding of the law. He's doing the same thing with this particular law, because look what the law that he quotes, eye for an eye, look what it says when we go to Exodus 21, 22 to 25. All right. If men fight and hit a pregnant woman and her child is born prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the one who hit her will surely be punished in accordance with what the woman's husband demands of him, and he will pay what the court decides. But if there is serious injury, then you will give a life for a life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Ooh. Jesus is not saying don't get recompense or remedy. What he's saying is don't be a vigilante and get it for yourself. That's not what the law is saying. What was happening was the Israelites at that time was using this as a justification for vengeance. He's like, no, that's not what it is. It's not a personal vendetta. You can't do that. If someone wrongs you, we have a law and the community needs to partake in correcting the malfunction that's happening here. You don't just get to do it. We all get to do it to make sure the situation gets remedied, right? And there's the Jameson Fawcett Brown Bible commentary, which talks about the eye for an eye, the law which authorized retaliation, a principle acted upon all primitive people, was a civil one. It was given to regulate the procedure of the public magistrate in determining the amount of compensation in every case of injury, but did not encourage feelings of private revenge. The later Jews, however, mistook it for a moral precept and were corrected by our Lord. He was correcting their understanding of the law. He's not saying don't get remedy. He's saying you can't personally go by yourself and do it.
Right. You can't be straight like Batman out here and you know, right, take it upon yourself.
So it's important that people understand, and Christians understand, we can get remedy when there's injury. We have precedent for that. It's not that we don't, you know, when we forgive someone's sin, it doesn't mean that that person doesn't suffer the consequences of that sin. It's a difference, right? These men took a life. There needs to be remedy for what they've done. Right. And as a Christian, we can ask for justice because it's actually biblical. Now, if they repent and they are followers of Jesus, amen. Great. You still got to pay the remedy, though. Right. You don't get out of that. You get out of the sin, but you don't get out of the consequence of the sin committed. Again, if I could just go real quick, that's the difference between the Hebrew sacrifice system and the sacrifice systems that were outside of Israel. Because when the other nations sacrificed to their gods, it's because their gods needed to eat those offerings, not Yahweh. Yahweh didn't need to eat anything because he's beyond that. The reason why he instituted the animal sacrifice system is justice, because God is just. And when God says, when there's injustice, someone has to pay for it. But here's the thing, I'm just, but I'm also love. And I don't want to have to punish you the way I should and justify it because I'm God. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow these innocent animals who had nothing to do with your sin, and I'm going to allow you to kill it so that you can survive. That's why he says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. The whole sacrificial system is justice. Jesus dying on the cross, he was fulfilling justice because we were objects of wrath. And we deserve the ultimate punishment. But because of Jesus' love, he paid the price. It was just. Someone had to pay. Like if someone went around the block and broke everybody's car window, somebody got to pay for it. Jesus said, I'm going to take the charge. But justice was still there. So yes, so as Christians, we can ask for justice. We can ask for remedy when we are the injured party. And that's all I'll say for now.
Okay, cool, man. Well, actually, what I want to do is kind of double back to something that you said, because it really flows with exactly where I wanted to go with it. I'm actually, like I said, making up my slides as I go. Interestingly enough, last time we did a presentation breakdown, we were talking about Candace Owens.
Right.
And we were talking about what's the proper way for Christians to engage in politics. And I'm actually going to kind of follow the same pathway, if you will, to how we address, injustice, right? So, to your point, as you said earlier, really our starting point is going to be God. Okay. Now I've got some videos about, for people who want to check it out. I've got like a video on, I want to say it's, what's that joint called? Well, anyway, I'll put it in the description. Where I've got videos where I talk about how God is the foundation of objective moral values and duties. You know what I'm saying, I've got, it's a common moral argument that we see, in apologetic circles, and I've got a couple of videos breaking down how atheism can account for morality, and also I've got a video where I talk about Hebrew Israelism, Kemeticism, and Islam, how neither of them can account for objective morality. And we got another, and again, I'll put all this in the chat. But the bottom line is, I'm trying to get at is we can demonstrate through argumentation how it is that God is the foundation for objective moral values and duties, right? God, is himself the very essence of what it means to be good. The Bible talks about how God is love. It didn't say that he has love, you know what I'm saying, or it didn't only say that he has love, or it didn't only say that he is loving. It says that he is love, right? There's an identity relation between God and love. It also says that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. There's no shadow of turning in him, right? And so again, it says God is light. It didn't just say that he has light or that he sheds light. It says that he is light. And that word light there is used as kind of a metaphor or pictographic language to refer to just goodness, righteousness, and so on and so forth. Like God is that, right? And so that's where we want to start in terms of our understanding when we're engaging in these issues and these moral questions and even law. Because our laws should approximate to morality as it actually is, with God actually, being the standard of that. Our laws should, reflect that rather than, the other way, or I'll just leave it at that. Our laws should reflect the moral reality. Let's just put it that way. And with God being himself, the standard of all morality. So I want to start with that, and you alluded to it earlier, how we really can't understand justice as it ought to be unless we understand God's nature and who we are created as being image bearers. You're saying we're made in the image of God, right? Now, I also have a video where I talk about what the image of God is, but just real briefly, one of the ideas that I tackle there is that being made in the image of God, we are both individually and collectively tasked with subduing the earth. I'm saying that's so. In other words, harnessing the earth realm in such a way as God's representative on the earth. That's a collective project. You know what I'm saying? That's not just for an individual. That's something that really mankind as a whole was created to do. Okay. Now, with that, obviously, relationships are going to be just crucial in accomplishing that sort of a goal. You got this collective project to reflect God in the earth, to steward the earth in a way that's honoring to him and reflects him. I'm saying, obviously, the way that we interact with one another is going to have everything to do with how we accomplish that plan. So just think about, let's say if you got two basketball teams, for example, right? One basketball team has good chemistry. I'm saying they work well together on the court, right? They get along, they work well together on the court and so forth. But maybe they're not like the most talented team. On the other hand, you got another team where they're, just say that the other team is equally talented, but they don't have that team chemistry. You know what I'm saying? They're not working well together. They're fighting in the locker room and on the court. They're shutting each other out, taking each other's shots, things like that. Well, 9 times out of 10, the team that's working well together is probably going to be more successful than the team that isn't, right? So, those relationships, how they're working together, have everything to do with how they're able to attain the goal that they're setting out for. And it's the same thing with humankind. With mankind, we've got this collective project to subdue the earth, and how we interact with one another. Saying it has everything to do with how we accomplish that God ordained mandate, right? That's part of what it means to be made in the image of God. We're both individually made in the image of God and collectively. You know what I'm saying? We're made in the image of God. Okay. Now, here's the thing. To your point, the Bible, obviously, man is fallen. I don't think we have to go into that. People can check out Genesis 3. You know what I'm saying? Adam and Eve, they messed it up. And lo and behold, now you've got sin in the mix. Okay. Now sin is like acid to the bond that we're supposed to have with one another, accomplishing this collective project. Sin gets in, it throws a monkey wrench into the relationships that we have with one another. That's what sin does. Okay. And along with that, one form of sin is injustice, right? To treat people in a way that we ought not to treat them. Now, we've been using that word justice a lot. I want to make sure that we kind of get around to at least touch on. I mean, that's a deep subject, but I at least want to touch on a biblical account of what justice, is and what it looks like. Okay. Let me share my screen a little bit here, share my PowerPoint. Now, my PowerPoint isn't nowhere near as sharp as BK Apologists, but I do the best that I can. I know we're moving kind of quick here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to put it in the full mode. But I think people can see that, though. So I pretty much just talked about this. I mean, you got metaphysics, just questions about God. Who is God? What is he like? And that, then downstream from that, you have ethics, or morality, we could say. And then downstream from that, we have politics and social issues. Like what we're talking about right now, I think kind of falls in that category of social issues, right? And notice that's kind of at the bottom. That's kind of what I wanted to illustrate there. We got to get the first part right before we can get the things that follow right, meaning ethics and political issues, social issues, and so forth. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. When we're talking about biblical justice and really, we're dealing with a composite of ideas. Okay, we're dealing with a collection of ideas. I use the word composite. That's overly, it gets complicated. Let me see if I can expand that. Well, I guess they can see that, right? Can you see that? I might be able to expand a little bit more here. Bear with me, y'all. It's my first time really trying this feature.
Okay, yeah, okay, right there.
Right there? Okay, that's cool. All right, that's cool. All right, so, yeah, when we think about like what is justice, all right? Give me 1 second. Kind of clear. Oop. I'm messing up. Oh, sorry. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I was trying to get that. So when we think about like what is justice, okay, there's a couple key words that we're going to find in the scriptures. One of them is zedakah, right? I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but I'm pretty sure that's spelled. Tzedakah. Yeah, so that's going to be one of them, and the other one's going to be mishpat. Okay. Right. Now, you see here, there's a range of different meanings, honesty, justice, merits, right, righteous acts and so forth. We're looking at Zedekah there. And actually, even like today amongst Jewish circles, that term Zedekah has come to mean something more like charity, but that's actually more so like kind of a derivative of what it originally meant, which really refers to just righteous acts, like doing rightly in the world. I'm saying particularly in our relations with other people. Okay, that's kind of what you want to get when you think about that word Zedekah, like doing rightly, but doing right by folks. You know what I'm saying? That's really what it comes down to. And then also I'll come back to that in a second. But also that word mishpat, you also see these words paired together or working in tandem to kind of communicate a bigger idea. Because mishpat is going to have to do with like ruling rightly, or making righteous judgments and things like that. You'll see it used in passages talking about judges not oppressing the poor and things of that nature. I'm really being quick with this, but I'll put something in the description where people can read more on that as well. But you see these words used in tandem with one another to communicate a bigger idea, which ultimately boils down to being actively seeking out the well-being of others. I'm saying in whatever context that you find yourself, particularly when it deals with what the Bible describes as the least of these. Right, the poor. You often see, particularly in the Old Testament, where the prophets talk about the poor, the widow, the foreigner. Right, because amongst Israel, those are groups who were typically the kind of like the disenfranchised. Okay, those are the groups who are more likely to be in economically precarious positions. The poor, the widow, and the foreigner. And so God is constantly admonishing Israel that you've got to look out for them. You got to look out for the least of these. Right. That's really what it looks like, to have this biblical view of justice. It's not just going to court, for example, and, making sure that the person who's guilty is found guilty. That's a reflection of justice, biblically speaking. But, justice is more robust than that. I'm saying it's more socially and community wide active, if you will. I'm saying it is woven throughout every aspect of how we deal with one another. this notion of justice, right? So I want to kind of bring out some scriptures, if you will, so maybe kind of really see what justice looks like. Did you want to say something before I go there, or?
Nah, keep it going. Keep it going.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna give folks a homework assignment. I don't even normally do this, but I'm gonna give folks a homework assignment to go back and read Isaiah chapter 58. Okay, Isaiah chapter 58. He just gives a great example of what biblical justice, looks like. So Isaiah chapter 58, just the whole chapter, and you'll really kind of get, some of the stuff I'm going to try to hit on here. All right. So let me get to the next slide. I'm being quick because I took up so much time with that rant, man. I'm trying to get my way.
No, but that was needed to be said, bro.
Okay, cool. So, I was talking about this collective project. We're made in the image of God, right? You know what I'm saying? And God has established in the earth. He wants us to reflect him, steward the earth in a way that reflects his nature, right? And so I just want to make a point here. When you think about Genesis chapter 18 and 19, you have God calling Abraham, right? And it says, Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. Now we hear that a lot right there. That verse right there, we hear a lot in word of faith circles. You know what I'm saying? They love that blessing part. You know what I'm saying? But there was more to it than that. He says he gives a reason. God gives a reason why he's doing this. He says, "For I have chosen him," meaning Abraham, "so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just." And if you look in the Hebrew, you're dealing with Zedekiah and we're dealing with Mishpat there. It was right and was just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him, right? And so we see even in the calling of Abraham, right, we see this echo of what I was talking about before. We've got this collective project, and righteousness and justice has everything to do with how we fulfill that. And so even when God calls Abraham, wrapped up in his reasoning for why he did that, he's commissioning Abraham to teach his seed, basically, and generations after him, to exemplify these two virtues of Zedekiah and Mishpat, right? So this isn't just something that is contained in God's nature. We're supposed to reflect that out. And it's part and parcel with why God even called Abraham. I'm going to keep it moving real quick. All right. And stop me if there's something you want to hit on, but Isaiah chapter 61, verse 8 and 9, right? This is very interesting right here. I really want to focus on this first clause. It says, "For I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing. In my faithfulness, I will reward my people and make an everlasting covenant with them. Their descendants will be known among the nations and their offspring among the peoples. All who see them will acknowledge that they are a people the Lord has blessed." Think about that. God says, I love justice, right? And I hate robbery and wrongdoing. Now, again, just get this. We are made in God's image, okay? And when we look at God's special revelation, the scriptures, we're given verses like these so we can know something about what God is like. What is God like? God loves justice. He loves justice and he hates robbery and wrongdoing. So when we think about this, now God says, "Be holy for I am holy," right? If we're made in his image and we're supposed to reflect him, then it seems to me that we ought to be the kind of people that love justice. We don't just like justice. We love justice and we hate wrongdoing. Those are very strong words. We hate robbery. Okay. So if we're going to be a disciple of Christ, I'm trying to make this more clear. If you're going to be a disciple of Christ, you know what I'm saying? We're all involved in this process of, what's the word I'm looking for? The Holy Spirit is sanctifying us. He's conforming us to the image of Christ. That's the work of the Holy Spirit in the life of every believer. Okay. Now, if we know that the Lord loves justice, he hates robbery, we see that's his character. Okay. God is conforming you to, he's making disciples. He's making us to be the kind of people that love justice and hate robbery and wrongdoing. That's the working of the Holy Spirit. So if you have a problem, if you don't love justice, if there's some disconnect between you and just staying in tune with justice and just loving justice, then you really have to check your heart. You really have to ask yourself, am I in right standing on this or that issue? I'll get back to that in a second. I'll get back to that. But I'm just saying that we ought to be this kind of person. I should be able to say that I, Adam Coleman, love justice and hate robbery and wrongdoing.
Right.
Right? You were gonna say
no
something?
matter who's the one doing it.
No matter who's the one doing it.
So
Period.
you can't pick and choose when you function properly.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because most people like to function properly all the time, I would assume, right?
I would hope.
But justice is a form of function, right? Justice is being right, doing what's right in God's sight.
Mm-hmm.
When you commit an injustice, you are now operating outside of God's functionality, right? So you got, because I think a lot of times when people hear the word justice, they think the courts and they think of the lady justice holding the scales.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
It's functionality. God created you to function at a certain level, and every time you decide not to, it becomes an issue, right? The word sin is an ancient term for missing the bullseye, right? You was created to hit the bullseye every time. When you don't, you're malfunctioning. So that's the issue with injustice. It's sin. It's you malfunctioning and not operating as a representation of the Creator. So.
Right. So I see some comments in the chat that I think would be interesting to address. But hopefully we'll have some enough time for Q&A where we can get back to those. But anybody can just kind of ride with us, and I'm for that smoke. So anyway, so we can keep it moving for right now, though. Anyway, so I promise I'm gonna keep it light, though. I'm not gonna get you in trouble. Like, see, if it was just me by myself, Alfred, I don't know what would happen, man. But I got you with me, man.
I'm already an accessory to the crime with you, bro. I'm already a co-defender. It's okay.
Right.
It's all right.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, I'm going to kind of rush through some. I actually had a whole bunch of justice verses, and people can go back and check these out. Isaiah 1:17. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. Okay. Now this is very interesting. When it talks about taking up the cause of the fatherless, that's action oriented, right? Now, what are they talking about? Again, when we're talking about taking up the cause of the fatherless, the widow, those are those groups who were the disenfranchised in Israel. Those are the ones who were economically vulnerable, socially vulnerable. Okay. That's the heart behind what's being said there. Take up the cause of those who are vulnerable in your society. That's what we ought to be doing. No, and just because that person is not in your tribe, or because you don't have maybe some personal connection to that person, just because you don't see them as being one of yours, doesn't negate the fact that you ought to be taking up the cause for those individuals or groups, right? Just saying. It says, Hosea 12:6, but you must return to your God, maintain love and justice, and wait for your God always. There's several admonitions. I mean, it's very clear that God is all about justice.
Can we get back to the other scripture, the Hosea, right? But again, right, I want you to really input the idea of functionality, right? Because he says, but you must return to your God, right? In the Hebrew, the word return, teshuvah, right, is to come back, right? Because you were supposed to function a certain way and you have not. So Hosea is telling the people to return to their operating system, right? And the way you do that is maintain love and justice, right? That's how you return. That's how you function properly, when you are concerned about maintaining love and justice. All right.
Yeah, and wait for your God always. Yeah, I mean those are components. Absolutely.
Right.
I'm kind of rushed forward here a little bit because I know I'm not trying to, But I mean, your comment was cool. I'm just letting you know. I'm sorry for going on.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Amos 5:24. But let justice roll down like a river, and righteousness a never failing stream. See how those words, justice and righteousness, are tag teaming again. You see that all throughout the scriptures. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. I mean, come on, man. Like, you can't read through the prophets and not see justice in there, right? And again, it's not. All right, I'm just leaving it at that. I'll get back to that. Somehow I got Isaiah 1:17 there again. Now, Proverbs 24:24-5 says, whoever says to the guilty, you are innocent, will be cursed by peoples and denounced by nations. But it will go well with those who convict the guilty, and rich blessing will come on them. Let me just read it again. I'm saying, so just in light of what we're talking about, right? Whoever says to the guilty, you are innocent, will be cursed by peoples and denounced by nations. But it will go well with those who convict the guilty, and rich blessing will come on them. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but I feel like it kind of speaks for itself. The reality is this, you know what I'm saying? God is real serious. He's real serious about how we handle guilt and innocence. I'm saying, are we kind of winking at sin and just kind of going along with it? Or are we just, holding people's feet to the fire? Like, right is right and wrong is wrong. Right is right and wrong is wrong. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is, But when, if you're calling the innocent, if you're calling the guilty innocent, that's a problem. That's a real problem for God. You want to say something on that, or you want to keep it rolling?
Nah, keep it going.
All right, cool. I'm gonna keep it rolling right there. All right, here we go. And this is actually, I think this is the last one I had, as a matter of fact. So now this is the words of Jesus right here. And I'll kind of just bring this point home. Matthew 23:23 says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." Right? So the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Right? These are the words of Jesus. Jesus is admonishing us to be just people. You know what I'm saying? People of justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Now, I said all that to say, again, if we're being conformed to the image of Christ, right? We already see God's nature. God is good. You know what I'm saying? He's the very essence of what it means to be good, right? God loves justice. You know what I'm saying? He's conforming us to his image by his Holy Spirit. We ought to be people that love justice. We have scripture after scripture, where God's admonishing his people, you know what I'm saying, to live out justice, particularly towards those who are disadvantaged in society, right? And then also we have, even in the words of Jesus, we see this echoed once again, right? Now, my thing is this: that means that as believers today, this is what we're held to. This is what we're held to, right? And what I see is that what happens is that our biblical command to be just people and people of righteousness gets encumbered or weighted down by, among other things, tribalism, like racial tribalism or political tribalism or economic tribalism, where you are socioeconomically. We allow these different aspects of where we are in society to weigh down the way in which we live out this biblical command. But we're instructed by scripture to not be entangled with the matters of this world, right? We shouldn't allow, so to make it more explicit, right? If this person, if you have a white person who was in, let's say the situation was reversed, you know what I'm saying? You had like a white person who was gunned down by 2 black people, for questionable reasons, and people who should seemingly be arrested don't get arrested, then we ought to speak out against that too. So like we got to keep it. You got to keep the same energy. I'm saying, so it's not about me being an angry black man, although I am angry. You know what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with that. It's just that I'm made in the image of God. I'm created to function justly, and so when I see injustice and justice, I'm not with it. I'm going to be upset about it. And it just so happens that when you're talking about these kinds of incidents, there is a historical context. You know what I'm saying? Right. That adds some fuel to the fire. Maybe we get into that. Maybe we won't.
And there's a disconnect, right? There's a disconnect when you look at one individual with a particular phenotype and see imagery of God, but when you see someone with a different phenotype, you don't see him the same way.
Right.
Even if the person is guilty.
Right.
Because many times we've seen guilty people with guns be able to be taken down and brought to justice without bloodshed because of a particular phenotype, right? Because they see them as another human being and they take the precautions and they do a great job. But when you don't see another individual as an imager of God, you don't take the same care. And that's injustice. Even if the person is guilty of whatever crime they've committed, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's what justice is. Treating everybody that they have intrinsic worth, regardless of what state they're in, because you're supposed to be a representative of God, even if they choose not to be.
That's right.
So.
That's right. And one last thing, I wish I could have posted it here is I do want to say this now. This might be where you might want to hop off the train at this point, Alfred. You might want to.
No, I'm good. I'm riding with you. Let's go.
Right.
Let's go.
You know, now this is going to be objectionable. I recognize that what I'm about to say is going to piss a lot of people off, but I think it needs to be said. Okay, when you look at the book of James, right? In the book of James, there's James is basically just instructing the people on various different things, and among other things, he talks about how when the rich person comes through, don't treat them special. Like, don't treat them like there's some kind of whatever. Treat them just like everybody else. They don't get to sit at the front of the assembly, or however he phrased it. You know what I'm saying? Now, and there's also instructions, for the rich person, not just in James, but I want to say it's in Timothy. I'm thinking about where God is through the biblical authors are cautioning rich people about not being ensnared by the riches and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Now, I have no problem with people who are wealthy, or that's not the point that I'm trying to get at. You know what I'm saying? The point that I'm trying to make, that there are the way that we live out biblical virtue, or really God's nature, is in some way contextual. Okay, it's in some way contextual. So Adam Coleman is not wealthy. You know what I'm saying? At least by American standards, in America anyway. I guess maybe worldwide or whatever. Well, I won't use myself as an example. The point is, when you think about like wealthy people, if you're poor, you don't necessarily have to worry about being pierced through what it talks about with your riches, because you ain't got no riches, right? But given, some people's status in terms of wealth, there are certain things that they have to watch out for and be careful for that somebody who's not wealthy wouldn't. You see what I'm saying? Now, here's where I'm going with that. So earthly status in that regard, possessions and the status that comes along with it, creates a context in which that person has to think about and navigate certain sin issues that other people would not. Okay. When it comes to the matter of race, I'm just being completely real with you. You know what I'm saying? In the urban apologetics community, I'm in a position where I can speak to certain issues and address certain things in a way that I'm probably going to be more proficient than somebody who, I'll just be explicit, than like a white apologist who doesn't deal with these kind of things. And that's no slight to them. It's just we're in different, context, and that's completely fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that, and so. And if they want to get involved, they can. There's no biblical reason why they can't. But it's just more likely they're going to be operating in a different sphere. And that's completely fine. Serve God in the context that you're called in. That's fine, right? But because I grew up in African-American context, I'm aware of certain things that put me in a position where God can use me, I guess maybe more readily to deal with certain things. Now, when it comes to the Hispanic community, I can't tell you nothing about the Hispanic community. Just about. I mean, I know that we're, co-minorities, I guess. You know what I'm saying? But there's lots of stuff that I don't know about the Hispanic community. You know what I'm saying? So I don't speak on things that I don't know. That's why I have somebody like a BK apologist who can speak more articulately about those kind of things. I've had Eric Hernandez on the show. I've had Paul Contreras on the show. You know what I'm saying? Because they can speak more, effectively about apologetics issues going on in that community. And the thing is, we're all one body. We're just various different members of one body. So we all Voltron together, work together, and we accomplish the task.
Right.
That's completely fine.
Right.
Now, with that being said, when it comes to racism in America, you know what I'm saying? The reality is this: African Americans are only in a position to do but so much with respect to challenging that particular principality and version of sin occurring in society. You know what I'm saying? Caucasians, you know what I'm saying, white Christians who know the Bible, you know what I'm saying, and they just happen to be Caucasian, they're in a much better position to deal with certain manifestations of racism because they're in a different context. You see what I'm saying? When I'm at a family cookout, I don't have any white people at the cookout making jokes against black people, right? But if you're at a family gathering and Uncle so-and-so says something about, the N-words, you're in a position to where you can address that issue. You know what I'm saying? And I'm probably not going to be able to do that. Right. You know what I'm saying? This has nothing to do with whether you're a good Christian or not. That has nothing to do with whether I'm a good Christian or not. I'm just talking about the context that we find ourselves and living out the gospel in those contexts. There are going to be certain aspects and manifestations of sin that I'm just not in position to address. You see what I'm saying? And so what we need, I can talk about racism all day, but inevitably you're going to have a segment of people who are going to look at me as being the angry black man,
Right.
who just emotional and salty about this, that, and the third. You know, I'm probably a socialist and you want to take everybody's money, and I'm a leftist and I'm a liberal, so on and so forth. Some people are going to think that way anyway. But then if somebody who's a Christian can come alongside that misinformed person and still say, hey, you know what, biblically speaking, this is how this race thing should be understood, then that might get that person to think twice, where they wouldn't hear it from me.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? But they would more readily hear it from somebody that would kind of make them think a little bit. You know what I mean? So
historically, that's been the case. You know, when it comes to the whole civil rights movement, we've had more than our share of white, quote unquote, white allies who are right beside us, helping us, you know, to get out of slavery. And we still have that, you know. And I think the encouragement that Adam wants to give is that we still need those allies. You know, we need our white brothers and sisters to be compassionate about the plight of others and using, yes, your privilege, because you do have one, using your privilege for the gospel, right? And helping us to break down injustice, right? Because it all boils down to sin. All of us who claim to wave the banner of Jesus need to be really into removing sin from the society that we live in. And that's all of us. Now, we all have different avenues in how we do it, but we all need to be in the process of doing it. So
it's true. It's true. And I know that's difficult to hear from somebody like myself. I mean, but I got to speak the truth, though. You see what I'm saying? I got to speak the truth. The reality is, look, you know, if I'm upset about the Arbery case, I mean, that's only going to go but so far. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the times where the body of Christ, this is a perfect time for the body of Christ to unite against evil. I'm saying across colors and, you know, political persuasions and all that kind of stuff. This is a perfect time to exemplify what the body of Christ is all about.
Right.
This is the perfect time. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, I think, you know, it's like, seriously, when you think about the fact that there's one, you know, Lord, one faith, one baptism. You know what I'm saying? We got the bond of peace, the bond of love, you know what I mean? That ought to unite us. If we would really function in that way, man, I mean, this country would be turned upside down, man. In a day, it would be turned upside down. Absolutely. But the reality is, we've all got to get on board, man. We all got to get on board.
But as long as we other individuals, as long as we do the othering, and we don't see the other person as a fellow imager, we're gonna be right where we at.
Right.
That's just what the truth is. As long as we see each other as separate things and not a family of believers, then racism and different privileges, whether it's white privilege, male privilege, right? All the other isms will always be in play if we don't decide to unify and conquer sin wherever it lays. Sure.
Yeah. And I'll be the first to say it. I mean, I say it all the time. Well, maybe I need to say it more. I'm a radical reconciliationist. I'm a radical reconciliationist. I'm gonna tell you, I'll be explicit about what I mean about that. If you understand the history, here's the thing: the Bible talks about how we ought not to be. It's Paul. He talks about how we ought not to be, or we're not ignorant of the enemy's devices.
Right.
Okay. All right. So what the enemy's trying to do, we ought to have some wisdom and discernment, such that we can detect it and then respond to it correctly. All right. Now, when you look at historically in this country, legally, African Americans and white Americans have been pushed apart. They've been pushed apart because we weren't allowed to live in the same spaces. You know, obviously, interaction between the two was inhibited. Between the two groups was inhibited for the longest time. You know what I'm saying, due to segregation laws and so forth. Now, those kinds of things set a path such that even believers were not fellowshipping together as they ought to. You see what I'm saying? So the enemy has used race in America, and I'm guessing in other contexts as well, but at least in America, has used race to drive a wedge in between believers who otherwise should be engaging in godly fellowship. You can't read the New Testament without reading a whole lot about fellowship.
Yep.
Fellowship was very important to the early church. Okay. Now, here's the thing. The enemy has used race to disrupt godly fellowship among believers. And as these groups have, diverged from one another, the gap between them has been filled in with misconceptions, biases from the world, you know what I'm saying, lies and deception to keep those two communities apart. And so I think the only way to really rectify that is we have to be intentional about undoing the damage of racism, segregation, and all these kinds of things. We have to, within the church, we have to be intentional with undoing that damage.
Yep.
Okay. What that looks like is, you know, we've got to be intentional about getting together. You know what I'm saying, eating with one another, having, you know, you got to have a cookout. I don't care what you got to do. Figure it out. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, you can't have real fellowship without truth. Okay. If I can't be truthful with you, then as the Bible talks about, the Bible talks about love unfeigned. You know what I'm saying, like basically authentic love. I can't have authentic love with you if I'm wearing a mask. Right. So if when you're talking about American history, if I have to pretend that I'm just as enthused about every aspect of American history as you are, I'm not being real. because I'm having to set aside the historical realities that I study all the time. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not saying that, you know, I'm just going to leave that as it is. You know, the flip side of it is, you know, if everybody's not being honest, then you can't really, we can't fellowship with one another. You see what I'm saying? I don't believe that America is the worst country in the world. I don't. You know what I'm saying? And whoever's going to get mad at me for saying that, you know, maybe some Hebrews or something like that. I think there's other worse places we could live. You know what I'm saying? That's the reality of it. Right. At the same time, I'm not going to engage in revisionist history that paints America the beautiful in ways that, you know, just don't do justice to depravity that the Bible speaks of working itself out in our nation's history. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, right? And so when I approach, you know, history, whoever's history, you know what I'm saying, and observe those kinds of things, you can't get mad at me. It's there, right? And we got to be real about it. We got to be real about it. So, you know, I just want to say, you know, we really have to take these things into account. You know, I know I said a lot, man. I feel like I need to let you get in there, man. Go ahead.
No, bro. I mean, this is your show. It's all good. So,
I just you know, like 85 subscribers, like right there. I guarantee. I guarantee.
But again, man, if I can just drill this home a little bit more, I mean, you definitely did an amazing job. But let me share something real quick. Okay. All right. Could you share the screen?
Yep.
Cool. So, right, Deuteronomy 32:4. The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice, a God of faithfulness, and without iniquity, just and upright is he. Right? So we talked about this is who he is. This is what makes God God, his functionality, his ability to operate perfectly and faithfully and without malfunction, because that's what iniquity is, malfunction, right? And elsewhere in Psalm 89:14, righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. Steadfast love and faithfulness go before you, right? This is what makes God God. You know, if you ever wanted to figure out exactly what God is this. He is correct. He is right. And all the scriptures that Adam talked about was God trying to get his creation to come back to operating correctly, right? So that's what the whole Bible is about. God in pursuit of man so that man could reflect God. Mm-hmm. And to do that, it takes righteousness and justice.
And justice, right. So. And, you know, I want to get to some Q&A here, if you're cool with that. But before we do, I do want to acknowledge, first of all, some people on my page, I'm just throwing it out there because some people on my Facebook page brought this up. You know, they refer to Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael as Christian, like white Christian, something or other. I have no idea what these gentlemen believe. I mean, I don't know them, and I haven't seen anything in the media really spelling out what it is that they believe. I'm not aware if they go to a church or not. I don't know. You know, for their sake, I hope that they're not going to hell. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. You know what I'm saying? I hope that's not the case. And if they don't know Christ, I hope they come to know Christ. I really do. I mean that. You know what I'm saying? We all need Jesus, regardless of who you are. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I mean the real Jesus, not the, I'll leave it alone. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to throw shots unnecessarily. But, you know, I do want to say that there is this tendency, you know, when incidents like these, to associate individuals like that with Christianity, you know. And I'm going to be fair. Now, this might actually catch, you know, some people by surprise. I'm going to be fair and say that I understand why. The reason why is because, you know, so many people have touted America as being a Christian nation. And so there's this assumption that if you're going to be anything, then you must be a Christian.
Right. That's your default. You're a Christian.
That's the default, right? You know, culturally speaking, Christianity still holds a lot of sway here. And so, you know, people are going to make that assumption. Also, historically, you know, we do have just scores of people who were professing Christians who said that they were Christians and did some really heinous stuff, like whether it be from slavery on up, you know, that's the kinds of thing these folks who make these objections are focused on. With that being said, let's just say that let's say that they were Christians. You know, for Christian, there's a distinction to be made between Christians and Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Just because you have the deeds of certain Christians, I'm not even saying that they were Christians. I have no idea, but just for the sake of argument, let's just say they were. Just because you have Christians doing wrong, that's not indicative of the, you know, the morality or, you know, moral outworkings of Christianity itself. I'm saying, in order for you to make the allegation or substantiate some sort of claim that acts like these individuals that we're talking about tonight, or slave owners, or whoever were professing Christians and did wrong, in order for you to make an objection on the basis of their actions, that there's something therefore inherently wrong with Christianity, you got to go to the book. You got to go to the text and the doctrines of Christianity and demonstrate how the actions of somebody like Travis and Gregory McMichael logically follow from the teaching of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And the Bible at large. I'm saying you got to demonstrate that. And if you can't demonstrate that, then at best, all you can say is that these are two, you know, individuals who did something really wrong, who profess to be Christians. But that doesn't prove your case as far as Christianity itself being somehow, you know, morally flawed. Those kind of nuances are really important. And I wish that some of my people out there were more clear thinking about these things.
Because again, Christianity, right? I say this almost every time. Christianity, right? Christian, right? Christ is the anglicized version of Moshiach, right? The anointed one. The suffix ity, being in the state of being. So Christianity is the state of being like Moshiach, like Messiah.
Right.
So when you understand the term and you apply it to this situation, that these individuals, when they did what they did, were they practicing and being in a state of Messiah? That's the question you have to ask.
Yeah, that's the question, you know. And I want to say, to kind of bring things home, like, you know, and actually I plan on having another show about this, and maybe we can, you know, vibe on it together. But again, when we think about context, I was talking about context. This is what I meant to mention in terms of how we live out the things that God commands us to do in His Word. You know, if you're in a country like, you know, like China, for example, I'm saying, where you don't have as many freedoms, like legal freedoms, right? Your options are going to be more limited in terms of, you know, steps that you can take to deal with injustices, right? You know, you're not going to have as many legal options, you know, if you will, to address, or say if you live in some sort of, you know, like just total, what's the word I'm looking for? Like North Korea, for example. I'm saying you got this dictatorship. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, North Korea, you know, you're not going to have as many legal avenues through which you can have some redress for, you know, something that's unjust, right? But over here in America, you know, fortunately, we do live in a place where there are more options in terms of what we can do to address various forms of injustice. And so when we think about, you know, what we're commanded to do in terms of living, you know, justly and seeking justice, pursuing justice, even, right? We ought to avail ourselves to the range of options, you know, that we have available, right? Actually, I think we have a responsibility to do that. I think we have a responsibility because when you think about the scriptures, you know, if you for those who know to do good and don't do it, to them it is sin. You see what I'm saying? And so if I know that there are certain things that I can do to pursue justice, and I just whatever, I'm just kind of out for me, you know what I'm saying? Then I think God is going to really judge that. Now, obviously, you can't. It would take 24/7 for you to be active in every injustice. I understand. You can't be Superman. You can't save the world. We understand that. But I think there's somewhere, you know, within reason, where God looks at you and say, well, what are you doing with the resources that I've given you? And in this country, those reasons would include certain freedoms to enact change. And so, much props to Nefertiti and, anybody who's sending letters, for example, to Tom Durden, one of the DAs, I'm saying, inspired by, her, I saw, she knocked it out and I was like, man, I'm going to do the same thing. So I send a letter down to Durden. There's, elected officials that you can contact, down there that are dealing with the case. At that time, there hadn't been an arrest made, but now there has. And so hopefully, things will move forward the way they ought to. And let me be clear. I'm not looking for no lack of due process. I mean, these two individuals, they are owed by our American government. They are owed due process. So, let's, be clear. We're not dealing with revenge where we just kind of,
right.
I know you want to talk about that as well, where we, are out of pocket here. But, even your congressman, there's ways you can contact your congressman and just say, hey, at very least, you want their eyes on this situation, so that they can, if need be, if a federal investigation or if an investigation from the federal level rather needs to be launched, you can, petition with your congressman to make his or her voice known, in that regard as well. So there's a wealth of options, that we can go into, but I think that we are really responsible, for, taking advantage of those things. Right. Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
I guess we want to do some Q&A. Did you want to make that point about vengeance, though? I know we had.
I kind of did already with the eye for an eye, because justice is actually a community thing. We all need to come together so that we can exact justice. Revenge is a solo mission.
Right.
Right. And the only person who's up to the task of that kind of a mission is God himself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He gets to do that by himself. We don't get to exact justice by ourselves. It is the community, because that's the way because again, it's about restoring. It's about remedy. It's about coming back to our correct function. It's not about, I don't like what you did, so let me do it to you.
Right. Get back.
That is not justice.
Payback.
Right. It's not payback. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm good, bro.
Shout out to my man, Faithful to God in the chat.
Peace to Faithful.
Peace to my man, Faithful to God in the chat. If you're not on Faithful to God's channel, I don't know what you're doing. If you're not, peeping his information, I don't know what you're doing.
Faithful's a beast, straight up.
He is a beast.
Straight
Nobody
up.
is sharper when it comes to, the one West Hebrew Israelites. And I would say Hebrew Israelites in general. I'm saying that my man Faithful, that man gets it in. Shout out. There's been a couple of super chats, man. I missed. I've been ranting and all this kind of stuff. I want to make sure I give a shout out to
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, with the super chat. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. That's my dude right there from way back. You know what I'm saying, he still got bars. Y'all know what it is. My man GI with the bars. Benjamin Handelman, thank you. You know what I'm saying, for the super chat as well. I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate it. And there was another one that I missed, and I feel really bad about it, but I'm trying to scroll up to it right now. As I'm scrolling for this other super chat, hey, if y'all want to drop some questions in the chat room so we can address those, I definitely want to get to some questions before we dip out of here.
We got Sister Lala on the check-in. We got my man Steve, Nate D2. D2.
You already know, man. Nate D2.
AKA the gift of God. You know what I mean? That's his AKA,
There was another super chat and I missed it. And I really apologize. I really do. Yeah. So whoever that was, just thanks again. I apologize for missing that. Let me see. You got any questions here? While we're looking for some questions, I think they'll be coming in just a second. Did you want to tell me about your channel right quick before we get there? Or?
Oh yeah, I could shameless plug. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, please do.
All right, cool. So let me share my screen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Phil Fox. And Karma Crunk is in the building with the super chat. Thank you, my peoples. I appreciate it.
Let me see. It's just one great.
I need to go out and buy some diapers right now. So y'all are helping. y'all know I got these kids. You know what I mean? These kids are no joke. All
right. So
what's funny? This now I don't know if they coordinated this or not, but Karma Crunk says I would love to watch a Native American's perspective on social justice issues. And then right below her, you have Mr. Phil Fox, who says blessings to covering this topic. And so nice. If I'm not mistaken, I think Phil Fox is a Native American.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So it's just so wild how that's kind of paired up. Like
he's a tribesman. He's a tribesman.
There we go. So I don't know if they coordinated that or whatever, but I appreciate the super chats. And you know what? I've been saying it for a while. I need to make it happen. I definitely want to have a Native American's perspective, just in general on apologetics as well. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Because we need to have as many, voices as possible. All these things are important. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you could just share my screen, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this Monday it's going down. I don't know if you guys, saw how Damon Richardson basically broke the internet earlier today. They were supposed to have this mega debate with Brother Polite from the conscious community. It fell through. And if you didn't see the live, I'm not going to spoil it for you. You need to go see the live so you can see the conversation in its entirety. But we're going to have Damon come through to my channel with my boy Adam Coleman, and we're going to allow Mr. Damon Richardson to elaborate on the reason of what happened to the debates, right? And not only that, May 25th, we're going to have one of my favorite scholars on my channel, Dr. Michael Heiser. We're going to speak about the unseen realm of apologetics. That's May 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's what's coming down the pipe for me.
I will most definitely be tuning in for that. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, I'll be on your channel for the Damon Richardson joint as well.
Yes, sir.
Heiser is that dude, man. So we did have a question or a few come in. Let me go back for a second because my man Nate2D2 is quick on the draw. He was able to recover who it was that gave a super chat. So shout out to TT Beezy, gave $20 in the super chat. It's much appreciated. I appreciate y'all. One of these days I'm gonna get my testimony, man, about kind of how I've gotten into doing this ministry and how God has sustained me through, super chats and people giving it to the Patreon, for sure. So I haven't mentioned the Patreons yet, but people have been getting on me about doing a better job of mentioning my Patreon. So I'm gonna just throw it up there real quick. But I do have patreon.com/Adam Coleman. And, these are the things that help me to, be able to get on these lives and stuff like that, to where I don't have to work, 25 jobs, to, feed the kids and whatever. So, I appreciate it. And as a matter of fact, it actually, I'm being funny, but really it goes into like equipment and things like that. I've just got some new equipment. I've kind of got sidetracked by this Arbery situation that I won't be able to put it to use next week. But some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And, I'll be getting to that next week. But that equipment was purchased by the super chat funds. I mean, so it allows me to have to, not eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for a week, you know what I'm saying? And be able to get the things that I need, so that helps a great deal, y'all. I really appreciate it. So shout out to TT Beezy. Now we did have a question, and I think this is an interesting one. I believe this person identifies as a Hebrew Israelite. I think he mentioned that earlier in the chat, which I mentioned that, but I think it may feed into the question a little bit. He says, regarding the issue, why does it always seem that whenever we discuss justice, it's always at the expense of Black lives? Doesn't the Bible also say that we will get vengeance in Psalms 149, that we will get vengeance? Yeah. So do you want to tackle that, or what you want to do here?
You can get ahead.
Okay, cool. So shout out to CP as well, who gave in the super chat. I want to make sure I get all these. All right, cool. Yeah, my man CP. I want to definitely give you a shout out. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Now, I guess we'd have to open up Psalm 149. I mean, let me just say this first, though, that I think that one thing that we have to be careful of is, the Bible says, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." Number one, so that kind of gives us a cue right there in terms of who it is that's supposed to be exacting vengeance. And quite frankly, overall. And I think you alluded to this. Put it this way: God is the foundation of morality. I'm saying He, as I said before, He is what it means to be good, right? He's the very essence of what it means to be good. Okay. Now, with that being said, when you think about the different aspects of His goodness, like because He's the greatest possible being there is, I'm saying His justice and His mercy can work together in such a way that one is not compromised by the other. You see what I'm saying? Because He's all just and He's all good. He's all loving. He's all merciful. And these different attributes, if you will, of that good essence, of His essence of goodness, you see what I'm saying? They perfectly balance. I'm saying one is not cutting the other one off. So that's why, God can be merciful to the sinner, but at the same time, I'm saying justice was, as BK Apologists referred to earlier, justice was put on Jesus Christ for our benefit. So there was still justice, and you still got mercy. I'm saying so God's attributes, they don't cancel one another out. Put it that way. However, as us fallen beings, we don't have that sort of moral goodness to where we can effectively carry out justice all the time and mercy all the time. So there's just certain things that, if you will, are too high for us, to put it a better way. There are certain things that we're incapable of being entrusted with. You know what I'm saying? So for God to entrust us with bringing about vengeance would be like giving a pistol, a loaded weapon, to a 3-year-old. You see what I'm saying? Like, that 3-year-old can't be trusted to be walking around with that sort of a weapon. You see what I mean? And that's kind of what it is, like with justice being in our hands. We can't be entrusted. I mean, vengeance rather. We can't be entrusted with vengeance being in our hands because we mess it up, right? We're not morally fit to be given the responsibility and the capacity to seek out vengeance. You see what I'm saying?
And then, I mean, also you also take into account the genre in which the verse is written in. It is a song, right? It's a song. And yeah, it talks about vengeance, but what in the beginning of the song, what it says, it's the assembly. So again, you're not being Batman, right? We're talking about community. Now in the Old Testament, yes, Israel did go to war, but that's in the Old Testament. But even when it came to that, God sent them one and they did it together.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no Lone Ranger Israelite with a sword on some Conan the Barbarian mission. That's even in the Old Testament, you still didn't see that. So
wasn't none of that going on. Now I just want to say too, I'm going to verse. So this is Psalm 149, verse 6. I think this is what he's referring to. He says, "May the praise of God be in their mouths and a double-edged sword in their hands, to inflict vengeance on the nations and punishment on the peoples, to bind their kings with fetters, their nobles with shackles of iron, to carry out the sentence written against them. This is the glory of all his faithful people. Praise the Lord." Now, the question is, if we're going to look at that in context, who was Psalms 149 written to? Right? It's written to the nation state of Israel. Right? You got God dealing with God, you're talking about nation to nation. Right? Now, when you think about Hebrew Israelites, like there's no nation state. I mean, well, y'all could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they recognize themselves as being like a sovereign nation state. I don't believe they do. Maybe this particular person does, but he's not talking about just individuals going out here yoking up folks and exacting vengeance.
Right.
We're talking about the nation state of Israel. God had a covenant with Israel at that time that included its standing as a nation state. And so, yeah, if you got, the nations that are rising up against it or something like that, yeah, of course, in regards to war, I'm saying they can go and they can do what they got to do from a war standpoint. But that verse, I don't see any reason to think that it's able to be applied trans-temporally.
Right. It's not analogous to what we're doing right now.
Right. So I mean, you can't just cherry pick a verse out of the Old Testament and make the assumption that it's applicable to us today. Because first of all, I think we're under a new covenant, right? And we're talking about a kingdom, that comes without observation. We're not talking about a nation state, right? That's not what we're talking about here. But in terms of new covenant believers, right? So I think that we have to be careful not to take portions of scripture, particularly from the Old Testament, and say, okay, well, it says this, well, I can just kind of apply that willy-nilly,
right?
Across time and generalize it to all, whatever group you want to generalize it to.
Right. Because it was written at a particular time to a particular people for a particular purpose.
Right.
Those times, it's a historical thing. Not everything that you see in the Old Testament can you apply today. That's just because it was written for that time. And it's a song, right? You got to be careful in using psalms for any doctrinal statements, because these are songs to be sung. Right. So you want to keep that in mind as well. So.
Yeah. Also another thing to think about as well is that, some prophecies, let's say if you want to get prophetic with it, some prophecies are fulfilled in Christ. You know what I'm saying? Right. So there are passages that refer to Israel, and Christ is the one who fulfills those things. I'm saying, like, on Israel's behalf. And I've heard people use the example, like, if you think about the Olympics, where it talks about like America won the bronze. Well, obviously, we didn't all physically go compete in whatever, track meet or something like that. But somebody who's representing America, performed such and such on our behalf. You know what I'm saying? And in the same sense, there are certain prophecies that Jesus Christ fulfills, you know what I'm saying, kind of being the that being Israel, if you will, I'm saying in terms of fulfilling those prophecies. So likewise, when you think about the book of Revelations, I mean, Jesus is coming back. He's going to wreck shop on everybody. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a wrap for the nations. I mean,
Right.
the Bible talks about the blood will measure up to a horse's bridle and all that kind of stuff when Jesus comes back and renders justice. Right?
So if you're a fan of vengeance, you're going to see a lot of it. You just want to make sure you're not on the wrong side of that, John.
Exactly.
That's what you need to be concerned about, sir.
Right. And whoever Jesus wants to, exact vengeance on, he can do that. I'm just trying to stay under the blood so they ain't me.
Right.
That's where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm at. But here's the last thing I'm gonna say about it. And people also, if folks could, just go ahead and throw some more. We're gonna take a few more questions. Also, when we think about, we'll put it this way, we have to be careful not to impose our own vengeful desires onto the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? In other words, I'm just be very explicit. As African Americans, I'm just saying this because if I understand it correctly, I think this person's a Hebrew Israelite. As African Americans, we can't look at our history here and see all the wrongdoing that was done to our people and all these bad things and have some sort of anger, ungodly anger. Now, there's a righteous indignation that you can have. You know what I'm saying? But you can't allow that to be soured by the enemy and turned into an unrighteous anger. The Bible talks about be angry and sin not. Right, but that's a choice you have to make because you have to make because you could be angry and sin, right? And so what we want to do is we don't want to be in a position where we are harboring unrighteous anger. I'm saying where it becomes bitterness and things that are really ungodly, and then we take that and then read the scriptures through the lens of our own bitterness.
Right.
When you do that, you inevitably will come to wrong conclusions about what the word is actually saying.
Right, and again, community. The community had to get together and emulate God together, Old and New Testament, right? Because the church is the community of believers. And we need to function as a community in order for remedy to occur. Now, how we go about doing it in the Bret, I forgot the word in the Hebrew for New Testament, but how we do it in the New Testament is going to be different than how it was in the old contract. Mm-hmm. All right, Jonathan, how about this? A lot of talking, very little scripture. Okay, is sin transgression of the law, Jonathan? Is sin transgression of the law?
Right, okay, yeah.
All right, you talk now. Is sin transgression of the law? Yes or no, sir?
That'd be a good question. And while he's answering that, we do have another question.
Yes.
I do want to hear back from him though. So from Cool Blaze, definitely been seeing him around here in the chat. So shout out to him as well. He says apologetics. Excuse me. True Idea Apologetics. That's my name. My bad. How would you respond to someone who says the justice scriptures apply to individuals, not institutions? Well, I mean, the very simple answer to that would be is that some of those scriptures are, God is speaking to judges, right? He's talking about like court situations and people not being oppressed in the courts. And so he's dealing with systems. You know what I'm saying? He's just dealing with systems that were from historically contextual to, the Israelites at those times. So he talks about rendering judgments rightly and all those kind of things. And so we kind of have to, get into the Hebrew's mind as we're reading the scriptures. I'm saying, like, when God's talking about like not oppressing the poor, he's not saying an individual doing that. He's talking about, commerce. He's talking about, economic dealings and judges, not oppressing the poor and those kind of things. That's what he's talking about. Right. And so I guess to kind of bring it back around, just really having a person who says that, have them taking a closer look at where God is dealing with judges, and then just ask them, like, what does that say to you? Like, do you think that, God is just concerned about this individual judge, or do you think that, what he's looking at is how the process of justice is being rendered? I said it a little funny, but basically how justice is being rendered in this context. And I would kind of like point him to those kind of passages where God's dealing with judges and so forth, So
Jonathan, right? Okay. So he said, yes, sin is transgression of the law. So my next question to you, sir, is, do you sin?
Adam.
Do you sin? Yes or no, please. Sin is transgression of the law. So do you sin? I'd like to hear from you, sir.
I'd like to hear. In the meantime, Phil Fox says, and I think it's important, Mr. Phil Fox, God
He's a
won't pull the
doctor.
punch. I said, doctor, maybe he's a doctor, I don't know. If he wants the nation to kill, he will directly command it. And that's true. I mean, God, throughout the Old Testament, he uses nations to chastise one another. There are times when God sends Israel out to deal with other nations. There are times when God uses other nations to deal with Israel. Right. And so it's just, so there are times when he's using nation states to mete out justice, if you will, to administer justice. I see your boy responding, so I'll let you.
Right. So you're asking people to adhere to something that you yourself cannot. Right. If sin is transgression of the law and you sin, but you've been in this chat all night talking about the law. Why are you telling people to hold on to something that you yourself just said you cannot? You gotta think about that one. Okay. All right. So yeah, bro.
Somebody just asked a phenomenal question. I definitely think that we want to take a second to address it. Says, how can, this is from Benjamin Handelman. He says, how can we discuss some of these issues in the church without people throwing out false accusations about, quote, teaching a social gospel that isn't the real gospel?
I mean, that goes again to defining terms. When someone says social, what do they mean? You know what I mean? Social what? It's within a society. I thought we lived in a society, right? And the gospel is good news. And the good news is to be given to who? The society. So,
right.
I mean, right? Again, it all goes back to how you define the terms that you use.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Actually, I'm going to bring it back because I want to key in on something. And I appreciate you, Brandon Handelman, for asking it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of alluded to it earlier. I talked about the importance of fellowship. Okay. Again, you can't read the New Testament without hearing about fellowship. It even talks about, we have fellowship with the Father or one another and so on and so forth. Like fellowship is important. It's crucial, to the body of Christ. Right. I think some issues can't be handled if fellowship is absent. Right. If you remove fellowship from the mix, then I think to some extent you remove that meeting place where individuals can disagree with one another and still lean upon their common bond. And I think part of the reason why some of those conversations don't go well in terms of people being accused of teaching a social gospel that isn't the real gospel is because you have individuals yelling at each other from a distance who aren't really in real fellowship with one another, right? So they can't really get in close, I'm saying, and hash these kind of issues out. I'll be honest with you. Last May, I'm not even going to listen. I had a conversation with an individual, a well-known apologist. If I said his name, everybody would know who he was. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm talking about as well-known as you can be, just about. You know what I'm saying? Had a conversation. He just happened to be at at an apologetics event, and I'm just I have a heart. I can't be fake with people. You know what I'm saying? And so I stepped to him. I was like, I was very cool. I said, hey man, I love you as my brother in Christ, so on and so forth. But I vehemently disagree with you with respect to social issues, and here's why. And I laid it out. And one of the things that I said to him was that the problem is you got folks throwing grenades at each other on Twitter when really what they need to do is get off Twitter, call somebody, or at the time, we're on lockdown now, but get on Zoom or go meet up, whatever, you know what I'm saying, and talk it out. Because what happens is when you face to face, it's real easy to be a keyboard warrior, but when you're face to face and direct, then misconceptions can be corrected. People can have an opportunity to explain where they're coming from and have some pushback, get some clarification out there, things of that nature. Like the distance is causing part of the problem. Right. We're distant from one another. We're trying to have serious conversations, you know what I'm saying? Like super serious conversations from afar. And it's just very difficult to do that. You know what I'm saying? And so part of it, I think that, fellowship needs to be restored. We need to be more focused on the things that bind us together. But at the same time, you know what? Truth is truth, man. You know what I'm saying? Truth is truth. I can't, bridle my tongue on something that I believe God has told me to say. You know what I'm saying? Unless, unless he tells me to, or something. Well, I guess that'd be contradictory, but I can't bridle my tongue just because somebody's going to get upset. That's what I'm trying to say,
Right.
But ideally what you can have is if a person's going to make that allegation, if they're willing to listen, then I should have an opportunity to describe what it is that I'm advocating and show distinctions between, the social gospel as they understand it and what it is that I'm trying to get across, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't believe that just doing good for people in and of itself is beneficial from a kingdom standpoint. I'm saying doing good ought to be a reflection of who I am in Christ, and a reflection of what God is like, such that people can give glory to God and perhaps be more receptive to the gospel. I'm saying that's really the purpose of the kind of good works that people, in like the kind of more social oriented movements, that's kind of the intention of those, or the purpose behind those kind of things, right? So even though I might say something, and this happens to me all the time, I might say some things that a person who's more I might say some things that other people might be used to hearing from like a leftist. And so when they hear me talk, what they hear is,
they get triggered.
They get triggered. I'm saying, and the rest of what I have to say gets shut off because they've already determined in their mind, okay, he's on the leftist tip. When really, if you really hear what I'm saying that there are aspects of biblical truth that have been hijacked by the left. And even though it's been hijacked by the left, the Christian ought to be able to express those things, live those things out in the most authentic way that anybody could, given the fact that we belong to Christ and exemplify him. And just because they've tried to hijack it and made a counterfeit of it doesn't negate the reality of the biblical mandate that I'm espousing. So just because you hear me sounding like a leftist, because you think I sound like a leftist, you've got to join me in going to the scriptures so I can help you to identify where you're conflating what the left is saying with and this distorted version of what the Bible has to say that the left has run off with.
That sounds a whole lot like context.
Right.
That sounds like context.
Right. You got to be careful of that, man. Got to be careful of that.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, man, it's like the reason why the term hypocrite is being used is because you want people to keep something that you just said you yourself cannot. And you really haven't addressed that. You just keep throwing scriptures now. But I asked you, how can you ask people to do something that you yourself can't do? You haven't responded to that. But what you've done is throw a bunch of scriptures. So that's why they're talking to you in that. I mean, they're not being mean to you, but that's why they're saying what they're saying to you. Because you haven't addressed what I said.
Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to say too, like the social justice movements are often kind of demonized, I think, a lot today. And I think that's kind of unfair. I mean, the reality is, you have a segment of, the church today that they've gone the opposite route, where they don't care about, social issues. And I think they've really they don't understand, put it this way. I think you have some people who either don't understand or don't care about how, where getting involved in the well-being of others fits within the life of the disciple.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And that's what we need to help people see. It's like, some people, their moral compass is guided more so by secular conservatism than they realize. You know what I'm saying? And then you have some people whose moral compass is guided more by liberalism than they realize.
Right.
And what we ought to be doing is drawing attention back to what is it that the Bible says about social issues. You know what I'm saying? Right. Does the Bible limit, should we be limited in terms of who we help? You know what I'm saying? Based upon, like worldly parameters? Or are we really going to live out the Good Samaritan? Like, are we really going to be the Good Samaritan? Right.
And this is the issue with the ideological gangbanging, right? Because whatever the guy and the other side, whatever he says is bad, because I don't got no love for the other side. So he could say whatever, and he could say the most virtuous thing, but because it's coming from that side, it got to be wrong.
Right.
This is just blanket hatred, Yeah. Jonathan, you want to talk about having an honest conversation. I want you to respond to the idea that you're asking people to do something that you can't do. If you want to be honest, let's be honest then. Right? Okay.
My man Jacob Brown says, did I get his super chat? I probably did. And the way I had my screen, I couldn't see everything. I can see the chat now, but I missed some when I couldn't see my screen. So I'm just gonna say thank you for it in advance, and I apologize for not getting to that. But I do want to say one other thing that I think kind of gets confused. So, for example, to kind of tie it back around to, the subject matter for today, like when it comes to race and racism, I do believe that the incident that occurred, whether it be the McMichaels and the Brian William or somewhere along the line, I do think that this incident is yet another page or a chapter in the history of racism in this country. I do think that to be the case. Now, I could be wrong. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to say that outright. It could be, but I think it probably is. You know what I'm saying? Now, some people would disagree with me and they don't understand why. Well, why would you say something like that? And those are the times where conversations need to occur. So at that point, if once I make that statement, they can go, I guess one of two ways. I'll say they can either assume that I'm the angry black man, a leftist, and that's where that's coming from, or they could ask me, well, why do you think that? And I can give them my reasons, right? And I can say I can explain to them based upon how I've seen the context of the incident why I think that race was involved. Now, the Christian thing to do, I think, would be to ask the question. Why do you think that, Adam Coleman? You know what I'm saying? And then give me an opportunity to expound. Now, here's the good thing about it. I'm not infallible. So let's say that I give my reasons and that person's able to point out some holes and the way I've thought it through. At that point, it's upon me to be humble and say, you know what? That's a good point. Maybe I need to go ahead and rethink that. Maybe I myself have been influenced more so by society or whatever, and I need to kind of root that out. See, we've got this dialogue and this mutual opportunity to grow, right? And I think we've got to be humble enough to engage in that, right? So, yeah. Somebody said, can I explain something? Sorry.
I'm sorry about that. I got caught in the rabbit trail over here in the chat. So.
Oh, you good, man. You good. Benjamin Handelman asked for the Patreon link, so I will promptly, handle that because this helps me to keep doing what I do.
Keep the lights on.
That's true, man. Yeah, it's true. Yep. Somebody, Denise B said tribalism is rampant even in the Christian community. I totally agree. Yeah, unfortunately. Oh, all right. So I'm going to take a couple more questions before we get out of here. Somebody said, excuse me. Sorry, y'all. Adam and BK, can you explain to Jonathan how Christ Jesus is our new high priest and what entails the principles of it? I'm gonna give that to you.
I mean, it's that's a whole different show.
Yeah, I know it is.
A whole different show, and the guys in the chat are definitely taking care of that. Yeah, that's a whole different. That's a whole different show. And well, it seems that he kind of gets that, but he's conflating the two. He's hedging his bets, right? He's talking about grace. I'm saved by grace, but we got to keep these commandments. And it's like you can't do that. The reason why we need grace is because you can't keep the commandments. So you gotta have to pick a side. Either you're gonna really try to justify yourself via the law, or you're gonna accept the free gift of grace. But you can't have both, Jonathan. And that's how I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I haven't been following Jonathan closely enough to speak to or to kind of link the question and address him like I should. I wish I had. So I apologize for that.
MJ Jackson, what up, bro?
Yeah, MJ in the building. I'm gonna shout him out. I will say this though, that Christ is a perpetual sacrifice.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He's a perpetual sacrifice. So it's not like he just died on the cross and that was it for that. Like that one, it was like a one-time, installment or something like that. Like he's a continual sacrifice on our behalf. So if we understand, like, our sins are covered in him perpetually. That doesn't mean we can just do whatever we want to do, but it just, you can't refer back to the old covenant to resolve the sin issue. And I think that's the big problem that you see amongst, the law keepers, not just Hebrew Israelites, but anybody who misunderstands the role of the law in the life of the new covenant believer or today's follower of God. is that they don't really understand the role of the perpetual sacrifice of Christ. I wish I could answer that more. Sorry about that, Bill, but I haven't been following the conversation closely enough to speak to how that.
It'll take us completely way off what we're talking about, so it's fine.
Okay.
But
shout out
the
to
people in the
MJ
chat, they're doing it.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate it. I'm gonna need it, man, because I probably lost. I'm gonna log off and have like 100 less subscribers. Just that's what it is, man. Let's take one more question.
All right,
get up out of here, man. Oh man,
related to today's subject, because we kind of veered off a little.
Yeah. I should have said, I should.
I saw a shiny thing in the grass and I went for it. So my bad.
So it looks like I may have missed Jacob Brown's super chat question, and I've got to figure out how to look that up. And I don't want to. I want to make sure that I take care of folks who are bringing in super chat questions. So if somebody's got another question, they can definitely put it in. But I'm gonna take a second to see if I can find that with my man Jacob Brown. That's my guy, man. He been ride or die for a minute, yo. My man Jacob Brown been ride or die with me for a minute. I mean, he ride or die with me from like the early free thinking ministry days when I just started doing chat ministry and stuff.
Mr. Phil Fox has a question for you.
Okay. Mr. Phil Fox, he said, "Where's my words?" I got you. Can I do it right here? Okay, I almost put him in timeout by accident. I'm gonna block him by accident.
You could do it. You could do it from the YouTube side, not from the StreamYard side.
Oh, okay.
That's how you do it.
How do I do that? Boom, done. He's now a moderator. Okay. Oh, okay. So they put here we go. Oh, wait a minute. Is that the same person? I might be doing two. I might be two different things. Okay, well, I'll just answer this question. Oh, okay. So I think somebody restated Jacob Brown's question, and I think this is it. If it's not, then okay. Oh, D New copied and pasted it. Man, I tell you, these moderators be on it, boy. They're not playing around.
Facts.
They're not playing around. Okay, so shout out to D New. Appreciate it. Thank you for the help. And is D New a moderator? If D New's not a moderator, she should be. Oh, she is. Okay, cool. All right, just want to make sure. I was about to say, I know she got to be a moderator. D New and Nate 2D2, they're like the universal moderators for the entirety of YouTube. You know what I'm saying? They be on it, man. They are not playing around. Best moderators out. So the super chat question from Jacob Brown, True ID: why is it that politically conservative white people are so adverse to issues of race? How can we undo the view of race issues as liberal? Okay, but I think what it means is that how can we undo like the perspective that race issues is liberal? Man, that's a loaded question, man. Jacob Brown, hey, look, like I said, I think I probably lost 100 subscribers. I think Jacob Brown is trying to cost me another 100. I think he's trying to cost me like another 100 subscribers. Honestly, it would take a whole session to do that, but I do want to address this question. So I think that here's one thing I've come to realize. When I first started doing this show, I think I might have mentioned this last time. When I first started doing the True ID podcast, rather, I was really focused on how identity, wrong ideas of identity, end up being an issue of idolatry within the African American context. And I wanted to bring a biblical answer to that and draw people back to True ID, the real you, Imago Dei. And so what happens is I began studying along those lines. And as I did, I began to realize that it wasn't just an African American problem. It was a human problem. And you see the same thing cropping up in white communities, right? Some white communities, some individuals in white communities, rather, they prop up their self-esteem or their self-concept. Their self-concept is undergirded by their national identity and what they believe America to be, right? So America the Beautiful is not just like some sort of concept out there, but it has everything to do with how they develop their own self-concept. They feel positive about themselves in part because they feel positive about America and its heritage, right? And so when they look back at America, it's comfortable for them to think about America intervening in World War II, being the good guys. It's comfortable to think about America, fighting off the British, you know what I'm saying? And getting rid of taxation without representation. or getting involved in, again, like the Holocaust. I already said World War II, but, or World War I even, being the good guys, right? Everybody wants to be the good guys. So if that's how you build, and even when they think about, issues of slavery, it's kind of like slavery, was like a cold, what I'm saying, that America had, So when somebody like me comes along and says, no, slavery wasn't a cold, racism was a cold, man, America had bronchitis, has bronchitis, what I'm saying? Then it kind of undermines the nearly exclusive positive picture that they have of America that props up their identity, right? And so when somebody like me comes along and starts chipping away at that, then you're going to have a negative reaction, right? And so I think that one of the reasons why, politically conservative white people are so adverse to issues of race is that it undermines the image of America that they have used to prop up their own self-concept. Now, what I'm saying is, don't prop up your self-concept on the foundation of nationalism or conservatism or Americanism. I'm saying that remove your foot from that and get to the biblical foundation of who you are and prop yourself up on the basis of being made in God's image. That's the proper foundation, right? That's what I'm saying, but when people hear me talking, talk about slavery, this and the third, they're not trying to hear it because it undermines the revisionist version of American history that they've been fed, that has allowed for them to, hold to the nearly exclusive positive, version view of America that they have. I'm saying that all nations are screwed up. That's what I'm saying in relation to God's glory and God's goodness. I'm saying we've all messed up. Now, it is true that some nations are more approximate to God's goodness than others. That's true. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, we can't think of, our righteousness is a filthy rags. And I don't want anybody to take any goods from America's history and start fig leafing the bad stuff. And by fig leaf, I'm talking about Adam and Eve, where they sinned and they covered themselves up with fig leaves. I don't want anybody to take some positive aspects of American history and heritage and then use those as fig leaves to cover the bad and never really deal with the unrighteousness that's underlying and thus be drawn away from Christ along with the world. I want us to focus in on the righteousness that can only be given by Christ and build our foundation on that. But I think people have difficulty with that because we all have idols. Some of those idols are colored red, white, and blue. And we have to be careful about that. Now, how can we undo the view of race issues as being liberal? You know what? I think it just has to be a faithful commitment to the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? It has to be a faithful commitment to the scriptures. If I'm saying all this stuff and I'm not somehow tying it back to the scripture, or I'm not anchored in the word, then I make myself an easy target to be misinterpreted as somebody who's just a liberal, speaking Christianese. I've got to, that's why we went through the scriptures earlier when we're talking about justice. We got to tie it back to the scriptures,
right.
And also be good listeners too. You know what I'm saying? My conservative brothers and sisters in Christ, I don't hate them. And I think that some of them have sincere misunderstandings about what somebody like myself is saying. And so if I want to give myself the best opportunity to be heard and understood by them, and I do, because I want them to, if I believe I've got some gospel truth to share, that I want them to have it too. But I've got to be patient and give them the best opportunity to hear what it is I have to say. And where there is some sort of lack of clarity, I want to do my due diligence to try to clear that up. But in order to do that, I've got to be a good listener. I've got to be able to hear where people are coming from and then try my best, to try to articulate what the Bible has to say in ways that they can understand. And if for some reason, if there's some sort of heart issue that's standing in the way of them really grasping the truth, that I hope I'm conveying, then all I can do at that point is pray for that person and still hold myself to the truth that the Bible articulates, and then articulate to them as well as I go about doing the Lord's work. So, yeah, that's I think that's the best way I can answer that. Woo.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I guess, man, I was talking for a bit. I've almost lost my voice. I'm out here struggling. Shout out to my man MJ Jackson, came through again. You know what I mean? With the the MAGA before MAGA. I was going to ask you about it, bro. I was like, oh man, my man switching up on me. I didn't know what was up with it, but I'm kidding. Shout out to my man Matt Jackson for the super chat. There's another one I saw. from Blessed One says, I'm new to your channel and this sector of YouTube. Great commentary on the topics. Thank you, Blessed One. You knew. Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. I might get shut down tomorrow, but at least you showed up for this one. You know what I mean?
Grand opening, grand closing. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh man, so I believe if all hearts and minds are clear, I think we've covered everything. Let me just scroll to the bottom to make sure. I don't want to leave. I try to tie up everything. Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, just some kudos there. Appreciate it. Thank you, Denise B, for the kudos. She talked about slavery is still going on in the world to this day. I agree, all nations are messed up, and our identity should be found in Christ alone. Love you guys. Amen. Thank you. Love you too. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Facts. That's it.
Yep. There we go. Jacob Brown said, "Great answer." Okay, cool, man. I thought I was losing my voice there, but I'm glad I was able to resolve that. So, I'm gonna say just one thing briefly, but I'll let you go ahead and say your goodbyes or any ending thoughts or anything like that you want to end out with. And
again, justice is functioning in your proper place within the imago Dei. That's what justice is. And injustice is when you're malfunctioning in that representation.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yep. So there's some teleology to justice. You know what I'm saying? There's some function there going on. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? For my philosophers out there, that's a great point. It's a great point. So I will, for anybody who's been following me for a while, I had the True ID podcast, which I actually will be picking back up here pretty soon, just in a different way. So kind of be staying tuned for that. But I had a series that I started that I entitled, I think it's the Social Justice series or something like that. And people can go check that out. And was really sad. And I meant to say this earlier. I'm telling you, it was really sad, bro. At the time, there were some things going on where I couldn't finish that series out. And it was partly prompted by, some of the, police misconduct that we'd seen at the time and things of that nature, and the discussion that was going on about, social justice in the church and things like that. And, it was crazy is that when I discontinued that, I knew I would come back to that subject. And the reason why I knew is because I knew the incidences like the Arbery case were going to continue to happen. It's going to keep happening.
Yep.
And so I was like, well, I hate to end it right here, but I know I'm going to come back to it because there's going to be a need. I know something like this is going to happen again. And it's so sad that that's true. You know what I'm saying? But I want to give a shout out to all the guys out there who, in spite of being misinterpreted, have had misconceptions thrown at them about their Christian, Christianity, their faith being attacked and so forth. I want to give a shout out to Damon Richardson. I want to give a shout out to Eric Mason. I want to give a shout out to Isaiah Robertson. I want to give a shout out to my man Zion McGregor, my man CJ Rhodes, Justin Gibney, Lisa Fields, my man, even some of the OGs like it's going to escape me now. You know what I mean? But anyway, there's a laundry list of guys that I can give a shout out. And I just want to encourage, guys to stay biblically grounded. I'm not saying this that they need to, but I mean, they do. You know what I'm saying? But, just basically stay the course is what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? It's very difficult to speak against certain issues in America and not be thrown to the wayside by a lot of folks because people are just not really trying to hear it, And so I just want to encourage guys like that to, keep on doing what you do because they inspire people like me. And I appreciate you, BK Apologists, for coming on, man. I mean, I know this is a very difficult subject to handle. I mean, I appreciate you for being my counterbalance and keeping me anchored. You know what I mean?
Anytime.
And people, I'm not an angry guy. I'm really not. I'm pretty chill 99% of the time. But
when that 1% shows up, boy.
Well, I mean, that's hey, man. Here's the thing. Anybody can tune into my channel and see me going in on Hebrew Israelites and Comedics, at least the doctrine. I guess I don't go in on Hebrew Israelites. I go in on their doctrine. I don't have a problem with any individual or them as a group. I mean, in the sense that I don't have a personal issue against them.
Right.
And I'm just anti the teaching.
It's not vengeance.
It's not. Yeah, it's not vengeance. But when I go in on those things, I've got to be consistent. You know what I'm saying? I've got to be consistent. And just speak truth on the things that I feel God has compelled me to say. And oh yeah, you know what? Actually, somebody did mention. So Karma Crunk mentioned. And actually, this is kind of. I do want to mention this. Karma Crunk mentioned Ravi Zacharias. Last I heard, he was kind of in the would appear to be the final stages of a battle with cancer. I haven't heard anything further than that. I don't know if
yeah, that's the case. The tumor, the tumor went down, but the cancer, they said they can't really do anything about the cancer. So he's back home now in Atlanta and with his wife and his family. So
yeah, definitely, give a shout out to him and praying for him and his family. Y'all definitely be in prayer for them. As a matter of fact, the very first apologetics event that I ever went to was a RZIM event at Georgetown University. And I want to give a shout out to Stuart McAllister, who was speaking that night. He was part of RZIM. I think he still is. And I remember I asked him, I was like fresh into apology. I said, man, how can I get involved? And he told me, bloom where you're planted, and that was like maybe 6-7 years ago. And here I am, you know what I'm saying? So, through RZIM, that's kind of, one of the reasons why I'm doing what I do. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Robert Zacharias. Yep. Robert Zacharias Ministries, and definitely my prayers are with him and the family. So there we go, man. So I guess we're gonna roll on out. I want to appreciate everybody in the chat.
Just under 3 hours.
Yeah, I know, man. You know how we do, bro. We talked about it earlier, how we was gonna try to keep it to like 2 hours or hours, something like that. I was like, that's not gonna happen. Y'all know what it is, man. We doing our best out here. So love y'all. And I appreciate you guys for showing up and hanging with me. We had a good crowd out here tonight, man, and I'm thankful for it. And I love y'all. And I guess till next time. Love God, love people. Take care of things that God blesses you with. And be on BK Apologist channel Monday. It's gonna be lit over there. It's gonna be lit. All right, y'all.
Peace.